Chapter 601. This was an immortal-like palace that seemed to be situated on an ancient mountain peak. Starlight cascaded down, adding a touch of misty luster to the palace. In front of a pavilion, two figures could be seen. Just a single glance at them was enough to imprint their silhouettes into one's mind, unable to be erased. These two silhouettes were a pair of lovers. Although the man didn't have a peerlessly handsome appearance, his manly aura was rarely seen in the world. Just by standing there quietly, he gave people the feeling that he was a lofty mountain. However, at this moment, his eyes were as deep and gentle as water. Beside him, a beautiful woman lightly leaned on his shoulder. This woman seemed to be enveloped by a faint halo of light, incomparably resplendent. Although she was dressed casually, it couldn't mask the magnificence she exuded. Such a pair of man and woman were like a celestial couple, residing in this immortal-like realm. It was like an eternal scene, exuding an incomparable sense of beauty. The cry of an infant rang out. The woman hurriedly stood up and revealed a flawless smile to the man beside her. After that, her silhouette flickered as she directly vanished from where she stood. An instant later, she appeared beside the man with a swaddled infant in her arms. Her beautiful eyes shone with the radiance of motherly love. Originally, you could have ascended to the heavens to grasp the sun and moon, yet you chose to follow me to roam the world. I've let you down. The man stared at the woman who was currently in a daze. His eyes that seemed to be able to prop up the heavens and earth flickered with a hint of shame. What's the point of saying all this? Back then, you barged through the 13 heavenly moats alone just for a single glance back at me. At that time, I was already destined to accompany you for life. The woman's voice was very clean and gentle, a faint smile could be seen in her eyes. If I knew what would happen today, I would rather not have done all those things back then. The man shook his head. This isn't like the you of the past. The one I like is always that indomitable spirit, the one who rebelled against the primordial divine race in a fit of rage, the one who single-handedly slaughtered so many people that even immortals and demons would weep. The woman smiled, her beautiful eyes were still filled with warmth and affection. Qin Yuanfang gazed into the distance and sighed in his heart. It was as if his edges and corners had been smoothed out. The woman gently rested her head on his chest, placing the infant between them. She smiled, for the sake of me and our child, you have fallen to such a state. If you want to talk about guilt, it should be me. Look at our child, in the future, he will definitely grow up to be a man of indomitable spirit, just like you, daring to wield a divine weapon, asking the heavens, 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 who will rise and fall. Wentian, ask the heavens. The man mumbled. After that, he smiled. Let our child be named Wentian. A brilliant light flashed in the eyes of the woman as she lightly nodded her head. Playing with the baby in her arms, she smiled and spoke, in the future, if you are mediocre, I hope that you will live an ordinary life. But if you are able to support the heavens and earth, I hope that you will be able to seize the fortune of the 9 heavens, control the sun, moon and stars, trample over the vast mountains and rivers, trample over the immortal fiend god race. Do you really think so? The man turned around and looked at the woman as he asked softly. The woman still nodded gently. Fine, I will give everything I have to him. The man calmly spoke, as though he didn't know that his casual words would cause a huge commotion. The woman's body violently trembled, but she soon regained her composure. A teardrop flowed down her face, landing on the face of the infant. An innocent smile appeared on the face of the infant as he stretched his little hands out to grab at the air. He had no idea that his birth had caused his parents to make a decision. A resplendent light abruptly flashed, illuminating the entire palace. The woman slowly struggled free from the man's embrace. Her body radiated a boundless multicolored light, resembling a goddess from the 9 heavens. That kind of radiance was comparable to the light of the sun and moon. Bathed in the light, the woman seemed to be clad in a layer of resplendent robes. She had a crown on her head, and at this moment, she exuded a demonic sense of beauty. This kind of demonic beauty caused people to not dare to look directly into her eyes. The man trembled violently when he saw this scene. He wanted to speak, but the woman only laughed. Since you have already made your decision, I naturally have to accompany you. Even if I have to be consigned to eternal damnation, I don't care. I only hope that our child can truly stand tall in the heavens and earth, and not rely on our light. Yuan Feng, you can do it, right? The woman's smile was incomparably demonic. At this moment, she seemed to have transformed back into that woman who exuded magnificence through the generations. Qin Yuanfeng stared at her in a daze. An instant later, an incomparably resolute smile flickered in his eyes. After that, his body similarly radiated a boundless radiance, as though a wisp of life flame was ignited above his head. This wisp of flame seemed to want to incinerate his life, his blood. The aura emanating from that wisp of flame seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens. The two of them stared at each other, smiling calmly. All their blessings and hopes would be left for the infant between them. At this moment, a figure flashed over. This person was clad in black, and when he saw the scene before him, he knelt on the ground as tears instantly flowed down his face. He shouted in a loud voice, "Master, Madam, why must you do this? Uncle Black, you should have heard our conversation earlier. If he is mediocre, let him live an ordinary life. Never allow him to borrow my light. The son of Qin Yuanfeng, has to depend on himself to stand tall in the heavens and earth. Right now, the only people who know that I have a son are you all. Bring him away, don't let others know that he is my son." The man calmly spoke. The light radiating from him and the beautiful woman before him seeped into the infant's body. The two of them stared at each other, their gazes filled with boundless emotions. The infant between them was the crystallization of their love. They would give everything they had to him. This was the continuation of their lives. At this moment, a tear flowed down from the eyes of the man and the woman. Similarly, the face of the figure kneeling on the ground was already filled with tears. He knew what was going to happen next. This was the endpoint of this memory. It was as though someone had forcefully stripped away the last part of the memory. Boom! The aura radiating from Qin Wentian suddenly turned chaotic. Within the boundary monument of the immortal martial realm, his eyes abruptly opened. Unknowingly, there was actually a teardrop at the corner of his eyes. The gazes of everyone within the boundary monument were all focused on Qin Wentian. The astral energy circulating around him, as well as the chaotic aura, seemed to be in an extremely unstable state. They were all bewildered. What happened when Qin Wentian was cultivating? Why would such a situation occur? Father, mother. Qin Wentian mumbled in his heart. The scenes earlier were deeply imprinted in his mind, he was unable to forget them. He could finally confirm that the man in the memories of the tiny astral being was none other than his father. He had also finally seen his mother. They were so beautiful, so extraordinary. The man who dared to betray the primordial divine race and slaughtered so many immortals and devils that they wept was his father. The woman who resembled a goddess from the 9 heavens was his mother. They entrusted everything to him, hoping that he would be able to rely on his own strength to stand tall between the heavens and earth, trampling over all immortals and devils. Qin Wentian wanted to continue watching what happened exactly. He wanted to know what his parents had done for him. He also wanted to know what kind of power could force his extraordinary parents into such a predicament, to the point where they had to force Uncle Black to bring him away. Just from this memory, Qin Wentian could see the soul-stirring story behind his parents. How hateful, he could only see this much. At this moment, the suspicions Qin Wentian had towards his parents had completely vanished into thin air. "What happened to you?" A crisp voice drifted over. Only then did Qin Wentian sober up. His aura gradually stabilized as he glanced at Lu Bingyu who was beside him. Lu Bingyu couldn't imagine that Qin Wentian would actually have tears in his eyes. Such a young man was strong, confident, and forgiving. What kind of pain must he have experienced for him to have tears in his eyes? It's nothing. Qin Wentian emotionlessly replied. After which, he closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Very swiftly, a terrifying astral energy gushed forth from his body. Lu Bingyu stood there dumbfounded. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of disappointment. After which, she walked away and similarly sat cross-legged on the ground, beginning her cultivation. After some time, resplendent astral light circulated around Lu Bingyu's body, causing the eyes of the spectators to tremble. Lu Bingyu could actually see the astral energy within the boundary steel. Once again, Qin Wentian sent his will into the tiny astral being, delving deeper and deeper into it. After which, he gathered a large amount of astral energy and blasted it towards another fragment of the astral being, unceasingly bombarding it with attacks. This time around, the astral fragment seemed to be even more stable than before. The endless astral energy was completely devoured by it, yet it still had no way to unlock the astral memories. However, Qin Wentian really wanted to know what his parents had experienced. Now that he had borrowed the power of the boundary steel, he had this chance. If it was any other time, given his current cultivation base, he wouldn't even be able to activate these memory fragments. After a long time, the astral fragment was finally unlocked. Qin Wentian's consciousness abruptly exploded as a surge of terrifying memories gushed into his mind, forcefully jolting Qin Wentian's consciousness back. The glow of the tiny astral being dimmed as it fell silent once more. However, at this moment, some additional memories appeared in Qin Wentian's mind. However, these weren't the memories of his parents. Rather, it was a diagram with many scenes engraved on it. Fiend God Body Refinement Art. 4 words floated in Qin Wentian's mind. Fiend God Body Refinement Art. This was an extremely powerful cultivation art that used fiend god energy to refine one's body. It was very obvious that this cultivation art was left behind in the deep layers of memory fragments. This was a cultivation art that Qin Wentian's father had left behind for him when he reached a certain level of strength. But now, it had been unlocked by him in advance. Fiend God Body Refinement Art can be cultivated at the same time as the Fiend God Heaven Suppression Art. Complementing each other, I will be able to attain an even more heaven-defying cultivation art. Qin Wentian understood his father's good intentions. The tiny astral being and the vast amount of memories he had left behind for him were truly treasures. At this moment, Qin Wentian's state of mind was even more resolute than before. Those 2 shocking silhouettes, as well as their conversation, were things he would never be able to forget. Chapter 602. Ever since he was young, Qin Wentian had grown up with Uncle Black in the Qin residence. He had never imagined that he would have such an extraordinary background, nor did he expect that his parents would be so dazzling. That indomitable young man who slaughtered until immortals and devils cried, that young woman who was like a goddess from the 9 heavens yet was as gentle as water. Qin Wentian felt extremely proud of his parents. In this life, if I can't trample over immortals and devils, I would be ashamed to face you two. No matter what you two have experienced, I will definitely understand everything. Qin Wentian seemed to be able to see in even further direction. In the past, although he yearned to become stronger, his vision of the future was still hazy and blurry. But now, he had a direction that belonged to him. This time around, he borrowed the power of the boundary steel to unravel these memories. If he relied on himself, he would have to reach that legendary realm before he would be able to unravel all the memories his father left behind. Opening his eyes, Qin Wentian's pitch-black eyes shone with a soul-stirring luster. There was no sorrow, no disappointment, no dispiritedness. There was only an incomparably resolute conviction. Time passes by so quickly. Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. He took the wine cup that Lin Xianer had prepared for him and gulped it down in a single gulp, yet it seemed as though he still hadn't had enough. Standing up, he walked to the table. Lin Xian'er inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian, who was walking over. She could faintly sense that Qin Wentian seemed to have changed. That was a change in his demeanor. Right now, he was even more unfathomable. That pair of deep eyes of his gave off an indomitable will, as though he wanted to trample over all immortals and devils. Such a gaze actually caused Lin Xian'er's heart to involuntarily tremble. Maybe I saw wrongly. Lin Xian'er silently mused. As Qin Wentian's cultivation base improved, his demeanor would naturally change as well. It was just that she didn't know why Qin Wentian was driven into a state of illusion yesterday. Could it be that the boundary steel contained some mysterious energy that caused Qin Wentian to sink into an illusion? Let me pour the wine for you. Lin Xian'er smiled sweetly at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian didn't stand on ceremony and passed the wine cup to Lin Xian'er. Lin Xian'er held a wine cup in one hand and a wine flask in the other, seriously pouring wine for Qin Wentian. Her actions attracted the attention of many people. Thank you, Xian'er. Qin Wentian stared at the light smile on Lin Xian'er's face. That soft and delicate hand of hers held onto the wine cup and passed it over to him. He accepted it with a smile. Lin Xian'er's eyelashes fluttered as a dazzling smile appeared on her face. It was as though every contour of her face was so radiant and beautiful. If you like it, how about I pour you wine every day? Lin Xian'er teased Qin Wentian. As she spoke, a faint blush could be seen on her face, causing her beauty to stir the souls of those who saw her. I can't satisfy your conditions, Xian'er. Qin Wentian smiled as he sat down and drank a mouthful of wine. The condition he was referring to was naturally Lin Xian'er. That night, she said that she wanted to find a heaven's chosen who would only love her in this lifetime. If not, she would never marry. Lin Xian'er had a coquettish expression on her face as she coquettishly replied, what if Xian'er is willing to serve Sir Qin together with her? Cough, cough. Qin Wentian almost spat out the wine in his mouth. He only felt countless gazes landing on him. Evidently, everyone was stunned by Lin Xian'er's words. Especially so when they saw the bashful expression on Lin Xian'er's face, as well as her brazen words, it was sufficient to cause any man to go crazy. Poochie. Seeing the embarrassment on Qin Wentian's face, Lin Xian'er smiled sweetly. Qin Wentian knew that he had been teased. He bitterly smiled and shook his head. Lin Xian'er's soul-stirring countenance was already extremely shocking. When she intentionally unleashed her charm, it was even more difficult to resist. She was truly a heaven-sent beauty, it was unknown who would marry such a woman in the future. You guys can enjoy the delicacies and wine here, lovey-dovey with each other. The people inside are in a miserable state. After being locked up for 7 days, it's about time for me to release them. Ha ha ha. The realm lord of the immortal martial realm, Wu Mu, had a smile that was not a smile on his face as he glanced at Qin Wentian before shifting his gaze to the back of the monument. Yeah, junior sister Lingshuang and the rest are still in the immortal martial realm. They must be extremely anxious these few days. Duan Han stared at the back of the monument as rumbling sounds echoed out. The crowd only saw the monument they were in rising up as numerous silhouettes rushed out one after another. During these 7 days, those who were trapped in the immortal martial realm were truly suffocated to death. What was even more depressing was that even now, they still didn't know who the top 3 rankers were. Qin Wentian and the others stared ahead. Those geniuses who had recovered their cultivation bases all had expressions of excitement on their faces as they gathered together with those from their respective sects and clans. After that, they stared in the direction of the monument, and when they saw the top 3 names on the monument, all of them were stunned. Although they had personally witnessed Qin Wentian's strength, when they saw his name appearing at the top, their hearts involuntarily trembled. Qin Wentian naturally also saw Fan Lu, Yi Lingshuang and the rest. Yi Lingshuang had her head held high as an expression of unmasked excitement could be seen on her beautiful face. Fan Lo was so excited that he was jumping up and down, as though he was trying to show off to some people. Even the ice-cold eyes of Yunmengyi seemed to have melted as a soul-stirring smile appeared on her face, although it was only for an instant. Qin Wentian naturally saw this scene. Maybe because of their cultivation, the distance between him and these people would gradually grow further and further apart. However, these people were all his best friends. Their friendship wouldn't fade away with the passage of time. However, very quickly, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. He saw that there were some people outside who were in a confrontation with Fan Lo and his group. These people were from the Supreme D clan. They had some conflicts with Fan Lo and his group. Behind them, more and more experts appeared. These were the experts from the Supreme D clan and the experts sent by Yi Qingyun. Both sides were in a stalemate, but ultimately, no battle erupted. Qin Wentian narrowed his eyes as a cold light flickered within. He had heard that if it wasn't for Lin Xian or Di Shi would have already killed Fan Lo and the rest in the immortal martial realm. Alright, it's time for you guys to leave. I hope we'll have the chance to meet again in the future. The realm lord of the immortal martial realm, Wu Mu, spoke, his words causing expressions of bewilderment to appear on the faces of many. However, Qin Wentian, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu understood that this sentence was directed at them. The three of them had received an invitation from the realm lord of the immortal martial realm. Rumbling sounds thundered out as the stone monument landed on the ground once again. After which, the envoys of the immortal martial realm kept their banquet and departed. Wu Mu also left this place, and very soon, only the people of the immortal martial realm remained. After which, the stone monument opened up as a stairway leading to the outside of the immortal martial realm appeared. Instantly, countless gazes turned their gazes over, all of these gazes were filled with a scorching heat. This trip to the immortal martial realm that occurred once every 10 years had finally come to an end. It's over. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath. At the instant the stone monument opened up, he discovered that beautiful maiden who was biting her lips, her eyes filled with boundless emotions, was currently staring at him. Her gaze had never left him for even a second. It had been a few months, yet she had stood there unmoving, waiting for him to exit. The silhouettes within the stone monument all flickered as Qin Wentian stepped out. A warm smile could be seen on his face as he slowly walked out. The sunlight cascaded down on him, bringing with it a sense of warmth. Right now, he who was mixed in with the crowd was so dazzling and eye-catching. He's Qin Wentian, the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. How young, he shouldn't even be 30 years old yet he's actually the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. This is too inconceivable. Someone's heart trembled. Elder sister, do you believe in love at first sight? I've fallen in love with him, what should I do? A beautiful maiden clad in red asked her elder sister. I didn't believe it in the past, but now I do. The elder sister beside her stared unblinkingly in the direction of Qin Wentian as a love-struck expression appeared on her face. Her younger sister was completely dumbfounded. Elder sister, you are too old. Don't snatch him from me. I've decided, I want to have a child with him. Scram, this old lady is only 24 years old. A 16-year-old girl like you is already a child, how can you give birth to a child? The words of the two beautiful maidens caused the elders behind them to be completely dumbfounded. At this moment, countless gazes were focused on Qin Wentian. Before he came out, although many people had heard of his name, only an extremely few had actually seen him before. In their minds, they had imagined many times what Qin Wentian's appearance would look like, yet never would they have imagined that Qin Wentian was actually such a young and handsome man. Not only that young and handsome countenance of his was filled with an unyielding determination. Right now, he had a radiant smile on his face, as though the sun was shining brightly. It was hard to imagine how strong the killing power he had towards young women was. Naturally, all of this was built upon the fact that he was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. If he was just a mediocre person, even if he was incomparably handsome, there wouldn't be many outstanding females who would be moved by him. After all, there were still differences between men and women. I feel the pressure is too great. Some of the maidens noticed Lin Xian and Lu Bingyu who were standing beside Qin Wentian. Both of them were supreme beauties. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness also saw this scene. She frowned, only to see Lu Bingyu walking towards her. She lowered her head as she spoke in a light voice, "I've disappointed master." When the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness saw Lu Bingyu's expression, she could faintly sense that there was something wrong with her emotions. Her strict countenance involuntarily softened as she gently tousled Lu Bingyu's hair. "Bingyu, you are already not bad." Lu Bingyu's body trembled, she inclined her head and stared at the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Upon seeing the gentleness in the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness' eyes, her eyes instantly reddened. She didn't know why, but at this moment, she had an impulse to cry. This caused the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness to sigh in her heart. Ultimately, Lu Bingyu was still a child. Stretching out her hands, she gently embraced Lu Bingyu. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness spoke in a gentle voice, "Your talent in cultivation is already very outstanding. After all, you are younger than the other 8. Master was too harsh on you." Lu Bingyu's tears flowed down her face. She softly spoke in the bosom of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, "Master, I fought against him head-on and I was defeated. He didn't make things difficult for disciple, nor did he take the treasures in my body. He even treated disciple as a friend." The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness started, she instantly knew who Lu Bingyu was referring to. Her gaze turned to the young man under the sunlight as a complicated look flashed in her eyes. Chapter 603. Qin Wentian naturally wouldn't understand the feelings of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. He smiled as he slowly walked forward. That beautiful maiden also walked towards him, and the two of them met in the middle. After which, Mo Qingqing stretched out her hand and held on to Qin Wentian's hand tightly. She seemed to be slightly nervous, and the hand that was holding on to Qin Wentian's hand was even squeezed a little. The silhouette of a handsome young man, and the flawlessly beautiful maiden that could topple empires. The two of them held hands, standing side by side as the gentle wind fluttered their robes. At this moment, it was as though one could hear the sounds of the hearts of many young maidens breaking. When Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing stood together, the spectators couldn't help but have a feeling that the two of them were a pair of lovers made in heaven and earth. They were so perfect and flawless that no one could bear to disturb them. Even the maidens of the Medicine Sovereign Valley felt that the two of them were exceptionally compatible. Their hearts had changed, and their gazes were filled with blessings when they looked at the two of them. Lin Xian'er's beautiful eyes stared at the two of them, as a gentle smile could be seen in her eyes. No one could tell what she was thinking. Mo Qingqing took a step forward, holding on to Qin Wentian's hand as they walked through the air, arriving in front of the Medicine Sovereign. She held on to Qin Wentian's hand even tighter as her beautiful eyes stared at her master. Although she didn't say anything, the meaning she wanted to express was clear. She wanted to tell her master that this was the man she loved. Qin Wentian had already seen the Medicine Sovereign in the World Monument. Now that he saw Mo Qingqing's actions, he naturally understood the identity of the Medicine Sovereign. Most probably, this was the Medicine Sovereign of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. With regards to the Medicine Sovereign, Qin Wentian felt gratitude in his heart. After the battle at the Pill Emperor Hall, he fell into a coma and thought that Qingqing had died. It wasn't until later when Qing told him that Qingqing might still be alive that a trace of hope appeared in his heart. That day when he saw Qingqing in the royal palace of Yi, he was truly overjoyed. And the person who brought Qingqing back to life was this old man before him. Naturally, Qin Wentian was very grateful. The Medicine Sovereign was similarly contemplating Qin Wentian. His narrowed eyes revealed no emotions, causing Mo Qingqing to feel even more nervous. Why? Are you so complacent after obtaining the top ranker of the immortal martial realm? Are you flaunting in front of this old man? After a moment of silence, the medicine sovereign spoke, his words causing everyone to be startled. Could it be that the medicine sovereign didn't like Qin Wentian's attitude? But from the looks of it, Qin Wentian didn't seem to have any intentions of showing off. Master. Mo Qingqing pouted, her beautiful eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. The medicine sovereign glared at her. What a good fellow, you want to abduct my precious disciple just like that. Although it's not bad to be the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, there's only one such ranker every 10 years. There's nothing to be complacent about. Qin Wentian perspired. He could sense that the medicine sovereign didn't have any ill intentions. It was just that the tone of the medicine sovereign made it sound like he was the one who abducted his precious daughter. Qin Wentian involuntarily shook his head with a bitter smile. Senior, you know I don't have that intention. What? You still dare to talk back? The medicine sovereign continued, the immortal martial realm is held once every 10 years. In the royal sacred region, I've seen too many characters rise and fall. The names engraved on the monument are rotated once every 10 years. How many of them would be able to stand at the peak? So what if they are the top 3 rankers? They might still fall in the future, or they might be surpassed by others because of their complacency. The weight of the ranking monument isn't as heavy as you think it is. The spectators were all astonished. When Qin Wentian exited the immortal martial realm, the attention of the entire crowd was focused on him. Yet the medicine sovereign actually used words to deal a blow to Qin Wentian. That's right, so what if he's the top ranker of the immortal martial realm? If he dies, everything would be for naught. A cold voice drifted over. The person who spoke was none other than Di Shi, who had met up with the Supreme Di clan. He could sense that the morale of his clan members had weakened. Evidently, they had suffered a blow because of his ranking. Di Shi's heart was filled with resentment. Shut up! An explosive voice abruptly thundered out, akin to a slap to the face, causing Di Shi's entire body to tremble as he involuntarily retreated a step. After which, he only saw the medicine sovereign turning around, his beard fluttering in the wind. That pair of narrowed eyes of the medicine sovereign opened, exuding a sense of might even without anger. An overwhelming might gushed forth from him, causing him to feel a sense of suffocation. Since when is it your turn to interfere in the matters of this Seats clan? The medicine sovereign lifted his hand and slapped out. With a rumbling sound, Di Shi's body was directly flung through the air. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to be stunned. At this moment, that tyrannical old man was completely different from when he was facing Qin Wentian. Right now, he was truly exuding a terrifying might. The countenances of the Supreme Di clan turned ashen, but when they thought of the identity of the old man, they didn't even dare to let out a fart. And earlier, although the medicine sovereign used a lecturing tone when he spoke to Qin Wentian, there wasn't any coldness in his words. Just like what the medicine sovereign said, this was a matter of his clan matters. The spectators all had expressions of understanding on their faces when they thought of these words. No matter what, the medicine sovereign was still Mo Qingqing's master. He said that Qin Wentian was afraid that the medicine sovereign would be too arrogant and complacent, hence he could casually lecture him. Although he, Di Shi, was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, how could he have the qualifications to converse with the medicine sovereign? Qin Wentian was also stunned by this scene. Staring at that tyrannical old man, a smile appeared on his face as he mused in his heart, what an adorable old man. If the medicine sovereign knew of his thoughts, he would definitely give him a tight slap. Master. Mo Qingqing's eyes were red, yet a smile blossomed on her face. Her heart was filled with an intense warmth. As for Di Shi, who was at the side, his countenance turned ashen. A finger mark could be seen on his face as he stared at the medicine sovereign with incomparable rage in his eyes. When had he ever suffered such humiliation before? He wanted nothing more than to kill the medicine sovereign on the spot. That killing intent directly appeared in his eyes, yet the medicine sovereign only casually glanced at him before disregarding him. Although these juniors had some talent, given his status, there was no need for him to place them in his eyes. Those from the medicine sovereign valley couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they saw this scene. Seems like the medicine sovereigns doting on Imo Qingqing had already reached an unshakable level. What was laughable was that there was still someone in the medicine sovereign's valley who wanted to vie for position with Imo Qingqing. However, they couldn't understand why the mysterious medicine sovereign who rarely interfered with external affairs would dote on Imo Qingqing so much, as though she was his own daughter. Qin Wentian. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, only to see a group of silhouettes walking over. This group of people exuded an aura of nobility, as though they all had extraordinary statuses. Not only that, Qin Wentian also saw a few silhouettes clad in luxurious robes standing at the side. Among them, one of them was none other than the crown prince of Grand Shang, Shan Tong. This caused Qin Wentian to faintly understand the identities of these people. They were all from the royal clan of Grand Shang. The one who spoke was an old man standing at the very front. He looked to be in his 50s, but in truth, he was far older than that. The eyes of this old man contained an innate aura of a king. His eyes were filled with an intense arrogance, as though it was carved deep into his bones. Qin Wentian, I heard that you are just an ordinary disciple in the Battle Sword sect. The reason you became a disciple of the Battle Sword sect was because you wanted to enter the Royal Sacred Sect in the future. Right now, I'm officially inviting you to join the Royal Sacred Sect, accepting you as a disciple. As long as you agree, I can guarantee you the best cultivation resources, allowing you to become a core disciple of the Royal Sacred Sect. Your future would definitely be limitless. That person slowly spoke, and as the sound of his voice faded, a huge wave of commotion arose. As expected of the top ranker of the Immortal Martial Realm, those from the Royal Sacred Sect had already started to invite him to join. The Royal Sacred Sect was the absolute hegemon of the Royal Sacred Region. The most outstanding heaven chosen of this region would all be gathered in the Royal Sacred Sect, but their statuses were different. Those who could be ranked on the ranking monument of the Immortal Martial Realm had already proven their potential. There was no need for them to take the test to enter the Royal Sacred Sect. Not only that, they would be able to become a core disciple. As for Qin Wentian, there was no need to mention anything else. Recalling the first time he heard of the Royal Sacred Sect, Qin Wentian was filled with yearning for it. At that time, the Royal Sacred Sect was an unreachable lofty existence to him. Jun Yu was a disciple of the Royal Sacred Sect and could already proclaim himself as a hegemon in Grand Xia. But now, after experiencing the Immortal Martial Realm and seeing the memories left behind by his father, Qin Wentian's state of heart had long changed. Even when facing the invitation of experts from the Royal Sacred Sect, he was still as calm as ever. As long as he was willing, he could tell the envoys of the Immortal Martial Realm and leave the Royal Sacred Region to join the power that the master of the Immortal Martial Realm was from. This is an elder of the Royal Sacred Sect, Qin Wentian. I know you have some grudges with our royal clan, but that's just a small matter. I can compensate you. An expert clad in luxurious long robes spoke. Evidently, he was someone from the royal clan of Grand Shang and had an extraordinary status. Junior brother Qin, if you agree to him, it would be equivalent to you joining the faction of Grand Shang. Our Battle Sword sect also has a faction in the Royal Sacred Sect, we can easily recommend you to join our sect. The old sect leader would definitely take good care of you. Duan Han transmitted his voice to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian had obtained the position of the top ranker of the Immortal Martial Realm with the identity of a member of the Battle Sword sect. This was something that the members of the Battle Sword sect were extremely proud of. As fellow disciples of the same sect, Duan Han and Qin Wentian also had some friendship. Naturally, he didn't wish for Qin Wentian to be poached away by others. Yi Lingshuang was extremely nervous. Her lips trembled as though she wanted to say something, yet she ultimately didn't. She and Qin Wentian weren't merely fellow disciples of the same sect, they could also be considered as Qin Wentian's foster sister. She respected Qin Wentian's decision. "Boss, when you were fighting at the top of the stone monument, that bastard Shang Tong acted against us and even injured Ling Shuang. If it wasn't for Fairy Lin's help, who knows what the consequences would have been." Fatty Fan Lu didn't care so much. His relationship with Qin Wentian was as close as iron, and naturally, he could say anything he wanted. He couldn't help but to transmit his voice to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's eyes narrowed. Seems like the grudge between him and Shang Tong wasn't merely in Xian King City. After Shang Tong was eliminated, he actually bullied Sis Ling Shuang and the others. Qin Wentian felt gratitude in his heart towards Lin Xian'er. This woman had helped him twice, yet she didn't mention anything about it. Naturally, Yi Lingshuang didn't mention this matter, and Qin Wentian understood her meaning. This was a form of respect for him, and she didn't want to influence his decision. Qin Wentian, such an opportunity might not come by often. The number of disciples I have under me is extremely few. That expert from the Royal Sacred Sect spoke again upon seeing Qin Wentian's hesitation. His status in the Royal Sacred Sect was extraordinary, and it was true that he wouldn't take the initiative to invite others to be his disciple. Given his arrogance, it was already a sign that he regarded Qin Wentian very highly. Chapter 604. The statuses of elder-level characters in the Royal Sacred Sect were extraordinary. In the Royal Sacred Region, even if they met the sect leaders of the major sects, they would have to treat them as equals. There were some powerful elder-level characters who were lofty, even disregarding the human emperors of ancient countries and the sect leaders of the major sections. This elder-level character before them, in the Royal Sacred Sect, there were countless disciples who wanted to break their heads to become his disciple. Not only that, all of them were heaven-chosen or they wouldn't have been able to enter the Royal Sacred Sect. And now, he actually invited Qin Wentian to become his disciple in front of everyone. Naturally, he was giving face to Qin Wentian. Beside this elder-level character, there were also a few young-looking characters. One of them spoke to Qin Wentian. Not only is Master extremely powerful, he's also an extremely powerful weaponsmith and has an extraordinary status among the elders of the Royal Sacred Sect. If you can become Master's disciple, your status wouldn't be something ordinary disciples can compare to. Not only that, you can also learn divine inscriptions from Master. As for divine weapons, there's no need for you to worry about that at all. The surrounding people quietly listened. Such an enticement wasn't something ordinary people would be able to resist. After all, although Qin Wentian was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, he was just an ordinary disciple of the Battle Sword sect before this. There were still many uncertainties about his future in the Battle Sword sect. But right now, there was a chance for him to soar up to the heavens. He only needed to nod his head. "Sorry, I temporarily don't have any thoughts of joining the Royal Sacred Sect." Qin Wentian had long wanted to reject, but he didn't expect the other party to be so insistent. The conditions they proposed might seem to be because they thought highly of Qin Wentian, but in Qin Wentian's eyes, there was no temptation at all. Let alone the fact that the conflict between him and Shang Tong wasn't an ordinary one. Even if he remembered the kindness the Battle Sword sect had shown him back then in Xian King City, wouldn't it be unfair if he abandoned the Battle Sword sect and joined the Grand Shang faction? Back then in Xian King City, the royal clan of Grand Shang wanted to kill him, yet the Battle Sword sect protected him. Even if he joined the Royal Sacred Sect in the future, he would only join the Battle Sword faction. He refused. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, everyone froze. Although it was within reason, Qin Wentian's decisiveness in rejecting them was truly unexpected. They silently mused that Qin Wentian's temperament was truly extraordinary. As for those from the Grand Shang faction, their countenances were all extremely unsightly to behold. That elder had a cold expression on his face. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to invite someone to become his disciple, yet he was actually rejected in front of everyone. How could it look good on his face? But if he wanted to target a junior, wouldn't that be too lacking in bearing? You don't know what's good for you. Although he didn't express his stance, it didn't mean that his disciple wouldn't stand up for his master. The young man who spoke earlier turned to the elder and spoke, "Master, although this young man obtained the position of the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, it's merely a temporary feat. In the future, he will naturally understand that there's always a sky beyond the sky. How can a bug crawling on the ground understand how vast the sky is? This young man doesn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. He isn't worthy to be master's disciple." That's right. Swallows have no ambitions like swans, arrogant and complacent. Such a disciple, it's fine even if master doesn't want him. Another young man at the side spoke, as though he was trying to regain some face for that elder. Qin Wentian felt that these words were extremely ear-piercing. Did it mean that he had no choice but to accept their invitation to become their disciple? After rejecting him, they slandered and mocked him. It was truly an eye-opener. These two youths humiliated him to flatter their master. It was truly laughable. Mo Qingqing was still holding on to Qin Wentian's hand, standing shoulder to shoulder with Qin Wentian. Her eyes were ice-cold as she stared at the two young men. That pair of beautiful eyes flickered with a cold light, so sharp that it caused the two young men to feel a chill run down their spines. The eyes of that absolute beauty, at this moment, were akin to sharp blades. The two of them frowned as they stared at Mo Qingqing. One of them had a mocking smile on his face, as though he was mocking Qin Wentian for not even having the courage to refute them, yet he still needed such a beautiful maiden to stand up for him. How laughable. Luckily, I didn't agree earlier. At this moment, Qin Wentian laughed, causing the gazes of the two young men to turn sharp as they stared at Qin Wentian. What did these words mean? Qin Wentian stared at them. The arrogance on his face was extremely thick, as an intense sarcasm flashed in his eyes. If I were to become fellow disciples of the same sect as you two, it would truly be a shameful matter. After speaking, Qin Wentian didn't care about the unsightly expressions on their faces. He pulled Mo Qingqing along as they walked to the side of the medicine sovereign, while he himself turned his head back, ignoring the killing intent directed at him. He stared in the direction of Shang Tong as he spat out a single word, "Get the hell out here." Shang Tong furrowed his brows as his countenance gradually turned ashen. Qin Wentian's eyes were filled with arrogance, as though he was looking down at an ant. His words pierced through the arrogance in his heart. Thinking back to the past in Xian King City, he sat high up in the main seat, watching Qin Wentian's battle like he was watching a play. At that time, the two of them were basically people from different worlds. He believed that as long as he wanted to, he could easily end Qin Wentian's life. But even so, the person he looked down on back then had already obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. Not only that, Qin Wentian actually told him to get the hell out here in front of so many people. Right now, although Shang Tong had already broken through to the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, he didn't have much confidence when facing against Qin Wentian, who was also at the 7th level. Qin Wentian was someone who had comprehended the energy within the 7-sided monument. What do you mean by that? Shang Tong's countenance turned incredibly unsightly as he coldly asked. His words caused Fan Lu and the others to laugh. What did he mean by that? In the immortal martial realm, Shang Tong bullied them who had their cultivation bases suppressed. How tyrannical was he? Now, he was asking Qin Wentian what did he mean by that? Crown Prince of Grand Shang. The mocking tone in Qin Wentian's voice grew even more intense. Pointing his finger at Shang Tong, he continued, "Back then in Xian King City, if you have forgotten the words you said, let me repeat it for you. You killed my subordinates, I should personally kill you. However, this is the examination grounds of the 9 great sections. If I act now, I would only be lowering my status. Who doesn't know how to speak arrogant words? I once slaughtered my way out from the midst of an army of thousands of soldiers and horses, undergoing the tempering of hell. The cultivation bases of those I killed were all higher than me. If you can survive today, maybe you would have the qualifications to become my opponent in the future. At that time, I will kill you again. Qin Wentian stared at Shang Tong as he coldly continued, at that time, my cultivation base was a few levels lower than yours, yet you personally said such words. Not only that, you even said that whoever kills me would be rewarded with a heaven-mending pill. This is an old grudge. In the immortal martial realm, you were kicked out of the monument, and after that, you bullied my friend and injured my senior sister. This is a new grudge. Now, I'm still alive, and my cultivation base is the same as yours. Didn't you say you wanted to kill me? Why are you still standing there? Countless gazes landed on Shang Tong. Instantly, Shang Tong only felt a burning sensation on his face. Expressions of interest appeared on the faces of the spectators. Qin Wentian wanted to deal with the crown prince of Grand Shang, Shang Tong. The words spoken by Qin Wentian were all ironclad facts. If Shang Tong chose to hide now and didn't dare to come out for a battle, he would never be able to show his face in the future. This crown prince of Grand Shang would become a humiliation to the world. How sad, such a person is actually a crown prince. So it turns out that he only knows how to bully those whose cultivation bases are weaker than him. The face of his father has been completely thrown away by him. At this moment, Fatty Fan Le didn't forget to instigate Shang Tong as he sarcastically added, also, are these people from the same faction as him? No wonder you, Wentian, refused to join. Very soon, the entire royal sacred region will know of the character of these people. Shang Tong clenched his fists tightly as his eyes turned red. The countenances of those from the Grand Shang faction were all extremely unsightly to behold. The ironclad truth was right before their eyes. If Qin Wentian's cultivation base was higher than Shang Tong's, it wouldn't be a big deal if he didn't accept the challenge. However, their cultivation bases were the same, and Shang Tong had said those words and done those things before. If he chose to hide now, there would be no one who wouldn't despise him. Shang Tong. That elder from the royal sacred sect turned his gaze onto Shang Tong as he indifferently stated, go on, so what if you are defeated? Just start all over again. At this moment, his countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. It was fine if Qin Wentian refused to become his disciple, but to think that he was so overbearing, forcing Shang Tong to accept. Not only that, Shang Tong was standing right behind him, a junior of the royal sacred sect. Wasn't this a slap to his face? Since Qin Wentian wanted to fight, he would let Shang Tong accompany him. Not daring to fight was even more shameful than being defeated. Yes. Shang Tong nodded his head, he didn't dare to refute the words of the elder. And with this sentence, even if he was defeated, he would still have a chance to stand up. Even if Qin Wentian didn't dare to touch him. Since you want to fight so badly, I will grant you your wish. I will remember today's matter. Shang Tong slowly walked out, arriving in front of Qin Wentian. His countenance was ice cold, and the aura he exuded abruptly turned berserk. His eyes turned golden, containing a terrifying penetrative power. That killing intent he exuded was extremely cold. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by, and in an instant, Shang Tong only felt a supreme tyrannical pressure gushing over as a fearsome will of mandates gushed into his mind. After that, he saw a blurry silhouette of Qin Wentian. Runic light illuminated the skies, and in an instant, several copies of Qin Wentian appeared in front of him. Numerous gigantic palm imprints manifested, capable of plucking constellations from the heavens, enveloping this entire space. In just an instant, Shang Tong's countenance turned pale. His bloodline surged frenziedly as he howled in rage, unleashing a powerful innate technique. However, a terrifying rumbling sound rang out as a supreme pressure bore down on him. He only felt a sweetness in his throat as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. All the bones in his body shattered as the terrifying palm imprints directly lifted him up into the air. In an instant, his body appeared in front of Qin Wentian, and he was lifted up into the air. Insta-kill, a prince of Grand Shang couldn't even withstand a single strike. This was the first time the spectators witnessed Qin Wentian's combat prowess, how tyrannical. Shang Tong's entire body was in pain, but the pain in his heart was even more intense. A single strike, only a single strike. He stared at Qin Wentian, who was staring at him, only to feel a boundless sense of humiliation gushing over him. Qin Wentian stared at him, lifting him up into the air. That look of disdain in his eyes was sufficient to shatter all of Shang Tong's pride. Just like what you said, everyone can speak arrogant words, but I didn't expect you to be so useless. Qin Wentian calmly spoke. Release him. A voice drifted over, it was an expert from Grand Shang, glaring at Qin Wentian. Shang Tong could be defeated, but he couldn't allow himself to be humiliated. Release. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over as a mocking expression appeared on his face. Are you joking? As the sound of his voice faded, the entire space fell into silence once more. From the words of Qin Wentian, could it be that he dared to kill a prince of Grand Shang? Chapter 605. Release. When Shang Tong was in Xianqing City, he wanted to kill him. In the immortal martial realm, he even acted against Yi Lingshuang and the others. Now that Shang Tong was in his hands, how could he release him so easily? If that was the case, he wouldn't be mocking Shang Tong, but him, Qin Wentian. If he released Shang Tong, would Shang Tong be grateful to him? The eyes of the experts from Grand Shang narrowed as they stared at Qin Wentian. Right now, Qin Wentian was holding on to Shang Tong. As long as he willed it, he would be able to kill Shang Tong with a single thought. And from his earlier words, it was clear that he wanted Shang Tong's life. The old man from the royal sacred sect also had an expression of rage on his face. Earlier, he was the one who told Shang Tong to fight against Qin Wentian. The meaning behind his words was clear: if he was defeated, he would have to start all over again. No one would dare to touch his life. Although he didn't say the last sentence, everyone in the surroundings should have understood. Qin Wentian should have understood as well. If Qin Wentian didn't give him face by provoking Shang Tong earlier, if he really killed Shang Tong in front of him, not only would he not give him face, he would also be slapping the face of this elder of the royal sacred sect. How many years has it been since he met someone who dared to be so impudent in front of him? Those famous characters in the royal sacred region all shuddered like cicadas in winter before him. But now, a junior actually treated him like he was nothing. Not only that, he initially wanted to invite Shang Tong to join his sect, becoming his disciple. The two disciples beside him stepped out as a violent aura gushed towards Qin Wentian. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they stared at Qin Wentian, as they icily stated, "Do you know what you're doing?" Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the people before him. Him wanting to deal with Shang Tong actually had nothing to do with these people from the royal sacred region. Regardless of whether Shang Tong was here or not, he would still act. "I can't let go of someone who wants my life," Qin Wentian said, looking at the old man. The old man's eyes were cold. He stared at Qin Wentian and spat out two words: "Release him." Only two words, arrogant and cold. He didn't care what grudges there were between Shang Tong and Qin Wentian. He only knew that Qin Wentian had to release Shang Tong in one piece, because he was here. Shang Tong's countenance was incomparably malevolent. His eyes gleamed with a golden light as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian, wanting nothing more than to tear Qin Wentian's corpse into 1,000 pieces. His face was completely lost today. The gazes of the spectators all turned to Qin Wentian, waiting for his decision. Shang Tong was a prince of Grand Shang Empire. Such a status was extraordinary. Not only that, there was still the pressure from an elder of the royal sacred sect. Would Qin Wentian really dare to act against Shang Tong? Time seemed to have stopped as silence filled the air. Would Qin Wentian dare to kill him? The medicine sovereign also turned his gaze over, only to see Mo Qingqing turning her head to look at him. Her watery eyes were filled with a hint of hope. The person Qin Wentian was facing was an elder of the royal sacred region. If there was someone here who could suppress him, the medicine sovereign would be the only one. If not, nobody would be able to stand up for Qin Wentian. Seeing Qin Wentian facing such a situation, Mo Qingqing was naturally filled with worry. However, the medicine sovereign acted as though he didn't see her gaze. He was still smiling as he stared ahead, as though this matter had nothing to do with him. He also wanted to see if Qin Wentian would kill or not. The old man beside the medicine sovereign quietly stood there, as though he didn't exist. He hadn't spoken a single word. At this moment, his eyes were narrowed as he stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. He still didn't exude any aura, but for those who understood him, they would know that when he narrowed his eyes, it meant that he was in absolute danger. The two young men from the royal sacred sect saw that Qin Wentian was still holding on to Shang Tong. They took another step forward as a towering killing intent gushed forth. It was as though as long as Qin Wentian didn't listen, they would kill Qin Wentian on the spot. Their master was actually being disregarded by a junior here. If the two of them still didn't know how to make use of this opportunity, they would truly be too foolish. If he loses even a strand of hair, you won't be able to bear the consequences. One of them coldly spoke. He didn't care about the fact that Qin Wentian was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. That had nothing to do with him. He was a disciple of the royal sacred sect, what he cared about was how his master viewed him. As for Qin Wentian, no matter how high his talent was, it was impossible for him to extend his hands into the royal sacred sect. Qin Wentian stared at the killing intent gushing forth from the two of them. He then glanced at the old man from the royal sacred sect. That old man was calm and emotionless, as though he already knew that Qin Wentian wouldn't dare to kill him. Nobody here would dare to defy his words. When facing an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect, nobody dared to not consider the consequences. Even Qin Wentian was the same. If he released Shang Tong today, although this elder of the royal sacred sect would still feel hatred for him, he wouldn't make things difficult for him. After all, to him, Qin Wentian was only a junior. As for whether he would command the Grand Shang Empire to do something, that was something he didn't know. In any case, there was no need for him to give an order. Regardless of whether he released Shang Tong or not, the hatred between them was already formed. The Grand Shang Empire would definitely deal with him. Back then when Shang Tong wanted to kill him, the hatred between them had already been formed. It was just that at that time, Shang Tong was the one bullying him. Hence, the Grand Shang Empire didn't care. But now, things were different. He was the one dealing with Shang Tong. No matter what the consequences are, today, I want his life. Qin Wentian's voice rang out, filled with determination. After which, he blasted out with his palms as an incomparably terrifying attack blasted towards Shang Tong. A look of despair flashed in Shang Tong's eyes, he didn't expect that Qin Wentian would really dare to kill him. Boom! An explosive sound rang out, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble violently. The crowd only saw Shang Tong's body plummeting downwards from the air as his head exploded. He was killed on the spot. A cold wind whistled through the air, the gazes of the crowd were all focused on Qin Wentian. The person who obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm actually dared to kill a prince of Grand Shang Empire in front of everyone. A prince of Grand Xiao. His death concerned the prestige of a transcendent power in the royal sacred region. At the same time, he was also the son of the human emperor of Grand Xiao. Qin Wentian really dared to kill him. All of these, Qin Wentian had naturally thought of them before. He thought of the Grand Shang Empire, he thought of this elder of the royal sacred sect. Even if he released Shang Tong today, Shang Tong would still target him relentlessly. Could it be that he would forever be in a passive position? He and his friends could only be bullied, but they couldn't retaliate. If he did this, Qin Wentian knew that he wouldn't be able to maintain a calm state of mind. If he didn't even dare to kill a prince of Grand Xiao, how would he be able to chase after the footsteps of his parents in the future? How would he be able to stand above the immortals and devils? How would he be able to support the heavens and earth? That wasn't what he wanted. To kill Shang Tong, no matter how great the pressure was, he would face it head-on. Those from the Grand Shang faction personally witnessed Qin Wentian killing Shang Tong in front of their eyes. An incomparably fearsome tempest bore down on Qin Wentian. "You are courting death." The two youths from the royal sacred sect coldly spoke as they stepped out. However, at the same time, numerous beams of sword light flashed as sword chi hummed unceasingly. A few swords floated in front of Qin Wentian, humming as they clanged against each other. Behind Qin Wentian, a number of silhouettes appeared, exuding a fearsome sword intent that enveloped the two youths. These people who appeared were naturally from the battle sword sect. They remained silent, even when the elder of the royal sacred sect wanted to headhunt Qin Wentian, they didn't say anything. If Qin Wentian had chosen to agree, they would have nothing to say. But now that Qin Wentian chose not to, these people still dared to act against Qin Wentian. How could the members of the battle sword sect not interfere? Scram! A voice as cold as sharp swords rang out. After which, the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign walked to the side of Qin Wentian as he stared at the silhouettes in front of him. "Do you all treat my battle sword sect as non-existent?" The battle sword sect also had a faction in the royal sacred sect. They naturally didn't have any reverence or fear towards those from the Grand Shang faction, let alone the fact that these people were headhunting Qin Wentian right in front of their faces. The experts from Grand Shang all stepped forward, with the elder of the royal sacred sect in the center. Both sides were in a state of confrontation. "He killed my junior in front of my eyes. Do you all want to interfere in this matter?" That elder stared at the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign as he spoke. What a joke. Earlier Qin Wentian's words were clearly heard by everyone here. Shang Tong wanted to kill him but failed. Now that he was killed by Qin Wentian instead, "Since your junior is useless, why don't you stand out? In front of so many people from the royal sacred region, you better leave some face for yourself." The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign retorted. "My disciple has already warned him. As long as a strand of hair is missing from Shang Tong's body, I will definitely punish him." That elder acted as though he didn't hear the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign's words. A towering and terrifying aura gushed forth from him, pressing down on Qin Wentian. "His life is mine for sure," the elder of the royal sacred sect coldly stated, just like what Qin Wentian had said to Shang Tong. Qin Wentian obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. But today, he wanted to kill him as well. "I dare you to say one more sentence." A cold voice abruptly drifted over. In the next instant, the heavens and earth howled in rage as a bone-chilling killing intent swept through the entire space. Everyone who felt this cold wind couldn't help but shiver. This coldness seemed to be able to seep into one's bones, causing one's soul to tremble in fear. This aura was even more terrifying compared to the aura of the elder of the royal sacred sect. Not only that, it was directly targeted at the elder of the royal sacred sect. There seemed to be two terrifying auras clashing against each other, causing rumbling sounds to echo out in the air. The eyes of the elder of the royal sacred sect gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. The coldness in the air unceasingly gushed over, actually suppressing his aura and enveloping everyone from Grand Shang, causing expressions of terror to appear on the faces of those from the royal sacred sect as they turned their gazes towards a certain direction. They stared in the direction of the medicine sovereign. However, the source of that powerful coldness wasn't the medicine sovereign, but the silhouette beside the medicine sovereign. That silhouette narrowed his eyes as he stepped out, causing an even more violent chi flow to churn the space around him, madly blasting towards those from Grand Shang. At this instant, other than the elder of the royal sacred sect, the others involuntarily retreated as their countenances turned pale. "You dare to repeat that sentence again?" That old man's narrowed eyes flickered with a terrifying sense of danger as he stared at the elder of the royal sacred sect. The killing intent radiating from him was as though as long as the elder of the royal sacred sect dared to say another word, he would suffer the same fate as Shang Tong. Chapter 606. Arrogant, tyrannical. Everyone initially thought that the one who acted would be the medicine sovereign. Who would have thought that the old man beside the medicine sovereign would actually step out and be so unexcelled in this world? "Why don't you repeat that sentence one more time?" His ice-cold words, the sharpness of his killing intent churned the wind and clouds, permeating through all openings. These words of his weren't spoken to ordinary people, it was spoken to an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect. In the entire royal sacred region, he was a character that stood at the very peak. But when that old man spoke, no one dared to doubt him. Because, that incomparably terrifying killing intent was so strong that it was terrifying. It was as though as long as that old man repeated that sentence one more time, he would really kill that elder-level character of the royal sacred sect on the spot. That elder-level character of the royal sacred sect had an extremely ugly expression on his face. What status did he have? He came here today to spectate, yet he didn't expect to be humiliated so many times over. First, he was rejected by a junior, and after that, that junior killed Shang Tong right in front of his eyes. And after that, when he said that he wanted Qin Wentian's life for sure, someone actually stood out and told him, "Why don't you repeat that sentence one more time?" If ordinary people dared to say such words to him, he would have long since killed them. But the person before him seemed to be a friend of the medicine sovereign, and the aura radiating from him seemed to be able to suppress him. This indicated that the strength of this person was higher than him. But given his status, how could he be frightened? Not to mention, this was done in front of so many people. This trip to the immortal martial realm was a grand event in the royal sacred region. News of what happened here would soon circulate throughout the entire royal sacred region. "Are you threatening this seat?" That elder from the royal sacred region coldly replied. His aura similarly howled in rage, transforming into terrifying dark clouds that gushed towards the old man. Boom! The old man took another step out when he heard his words. As his step landed, a beam of killing intent flashed and instantly, the entire space around him transformed into a constellation. Incomparably resplendent beams of killing intent arced through the air, capable of severing even space itself. "Threatening? You are not qualified yet." The old man faintly spoke. After which, he coldly spat out, "All of you, scram for me." As the sound of his voice faded, the beams of killing intent unceasingly streaked through the air. The experts from Grand Shang Empire all retreated unceasingly, swiftly retreating to a faraway location. Very swiftly, they retreated to a very far distance. Only that elder from the royal sacred sect remained, facing the old man beside the medicine sovereign. It wasn't that the others didn't want to fight shoulder to shoulder with him, it was just that they didn't dare to do so. The disparity in strength between them was too obvious. If they didn't retreat, those streams of energy would be able to sever their bodies. Nobody wanted to die, they could only retreat. Even the two disciples of that elder had retreated far away, their faces filled with terror. Evidently, they didn't expect that there would be such a powerful existence standing up for Qin Wentian. Who is he? The faces of everyone were filled with shock as they stared at the old man. The medicine sovereign of the medicine sovereign valley had always been extremely mysterious. He could be considered one of the most ancient characters in the royal sacred region, having lived for an unknown number of years. One could very well imagine how long his lifespan was. Even the medicine sovereign didn't know much about him, let alone the friends of the medicine sovereign. But since this old man could stand shoulder to shoulder with the medicine sovereign and had such terrifying strength, he should at the very least be a character on the same level as the medicine sovereign. How dare you? The elder from the royal sacred sect was completely enraged. The lines on his face were no longer as gentle as before, replaced by a malevolent baleful aura. The royal sacred sect was the hegemonic power of the royal sacred region, ruling over countless territories. No matter where they went, they would always be lofty, disdainfully looking down on everyone. And he was an elder of the royal sacred sect. Usually, even the sect leaders and emperors of ancient countries would have to treat him with respect. But now, not only did the old man threaten him, he even told him to scram. In front of so many people, he was actually threatened and told to scram. Given his pride, how could he endure this? So what if the strength of the old man was above him? Bzzz. Astral light flashed, the entire space around him seemed to have changed. A constellation appeared as black-colored flames filled the skies, floating behind him. Despite the vast distance between them, Qin Wentian could still clearly feel the overwhelming destructive might radiating from it. Retreat. Countless people retreated, including Qin Wentian and the others. Only existences like the medicine sovereign, the old man and the flame mountain sword sovereign could still calmly stand at their original locations, staring at the black-colored flames that caused the skies to change color. Over there seemed to be a terrifying flame beast bearing its fangs, ready to pounce out at any moment. Do you know who you are talking to? That old man from the royal sacred sect stared at the old man, his voice so cold that it could pierce one's bones. A divine weapon appeared in his body, it was a divine truncheon with terrifying diagrams engraved on it. At the instant the truncheon appeared, the black-colored flames grew even more terrifying. The incomparably ferocious beast let out terrifying roars as though it could rush out at any moment. Since you don't wish to scram, just leave your life behind. The old man's eyes were still narrowed as he calmly spoke. There was no fluctuation in his voice, as though he was speaking of an extremely ordinary matter. Telling an elder of the royal sacred sect to leave his life behind, how audacious was this? Just the thought of it was sufficient to cause people to feel how crazy this was. In terms of status, an elder of the royal sacred sect was definitely not inferior to the human emperors of ancient countries or sect leaders of supreme sections. In terms of strength, they might be inferior to some, but they weren't too far off. Wanting to kill such a character, the word audacious was no longer sufficient to describe it. Not only that, did he have the strength to kill such an existence? Although they had no way to sense the exact strength of this elder, he was definitely at the upper 3 levels of celestial phenomenon. In addition to the might of that truncheon, how terrifying was his strength? Die! That elder of the royal sacred sect was completely enraged. With a thunderous roar, he stabbed out with his truncheon. Instantly, boundless flames rained down from the heavens, transforming into incomparably ferocious beasts made of black flames that lunged towards his opponent, wanting to devour him. Boom! The other party seemed to be unaware of this as he slowly walked forward. As his step descended, his entire body was enveloped by boundless streams of light that directly slashed apart the incoming attacks. A dazzling stream of light erupted from his body, blazing and dazzling like the scorching sun. Under the cover of his opponent's constellation, he walked out step by step. With every step he took, the light grew even more intense, until his entire body transformed into a beam of light, a beam of killing intent. After which, the crowd felt as though their eyes were about to be blinded by the piercing light. It was as though they couldn't see anything at all. There were several experts who forcefully endured the piercing pain and opened their eyes. They only saw beams of light that were as hot as the sun unceasingly flashing through the air, as though they were truly capable of slicing apart the void. When the light dissipated, the destructive energy still permeated the entire space. The two of them didn't move at all, still standing at their original location. It was as though nothing had happened between them at all. Has this battle ended? Many had bewildered looks on their faces. In fact, many of them didn't even see the ending of the battle earlier. The two of them simply stood there, as though time itself had stopped flowing. It was extremely bizarre. However, at this moment, the hearts of many people violently trembled, twitched, and seemed to stop breathing. Their hearts were beating wildly, and their eyes were wide open, revealing expressions of shock. It was as if they had seen something they didn't dare to believe. The constellation hadn't dissipated yet. That elder of the royal sacred sect stood there. Strands of light actually appeared on his body, intersecting with each other. These strands of light grew more and more numerous, as though there was no end to them. After which, that elder of the royal sacred sect disintegrated before the eyes of the crowd, vanishing just like that. He vanished like smoke, completely vanishing, transforming into light. After that, the constellation also dissipated. Everything seemed to have calmed down. The silence in the air was so terrifying that it was terrifying. Yet the hearts of the crowd couldn't calm down at all. This scene was something that some of them would never be able to forget for the rest of their lives. Those strands of light that intersected the elder's body, were all scars. In that short instant, the countless scars caused the elder to disintegrate into nothingness. This caused many to feel a sense of terror that originated from the depths of their souls. It was too terrifying. That narrowed old man's eyes returned to normal, no longer narrowing. That terrifying sense of danger vanished from him, but the shock it left behind in the hearts of the crowd was still unable to be erased. Never would they have thought that after the immortal martial realm ended, they would still be able to witness such a shocking battle that shook the entire royal sacred region. Although this battle was very short, it would definitely be circulated around the immortal martial realm together with the ranking monument. An elder of the royal sacred sect, an absolute hegemon of the royal sacred sect, was killed in an instant. The impact of this battle wouldn't be any weaker compared to the ranking of the immortal martial realm. Not only that, there was a commonality between the two, and that was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian. Killed. This time, the one killed wasn't the prince of Grand Shang Empire, but an elder of the royal sacred sect. The crowd was dumbfounded. Those from Grand Shang were all trembling. Even now, they didn't dare to believe that because of Shang Tong, an elder of the royal sacred sect had died. As for the two disciples of the elder from the royal sacred sect, they gulped down their saliva as they stared at that old man. They wanted to say something, yet they discovered that they didn't dare to make any sound. This old man truly had no qualms about killing their master. Not to mention the others. Even Qin Wentian himself was dumbfounded as he looked at the unknown old man in astonishment. This was too crazy. Why would this old man do such a crazy thing? An elder of the royal sacred sect had died because of him. Chapter 607. Such an ending was something Qin Wentian didn't expect. An elder-level character of the royal sacred sect had fallen. He didn't know what attitude the royal sacred sect would have when dealing with this matter. Before this, he had already predicted that killing Shang Tong would definitely incur the wrath of Grand Shang. The experts from the Battle Sword sect, Yi country, and the Medicine Sovereign would definitely act for him. As for the revenge of Grand Shang in the future, Qin Wentian naturally had already thought of this. However, if he released Shang Tong just because he was afraid of revenge, he wouldn't be able to do it. But now, the person implicated in this matter wasn't merely a prince. An elder-level character of the royal sacred sect, and was even an extremely powerful weaponsmith. This instantly caused him to feel a heavy pressure bearing down on him. However, he didn't blame the old man. After all, this matter was caused by him and the old man acted for him, Qin Wentian. In that case, no matter what he would encounter in the future, he would have to accept it. However, there was a trace of curiosity in his heart. Why would this old man act so crazily over this matter? He had no way to understand. Could it be that an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect wasn't even worth a mention in his eyes? Many thanks for Senior's help. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the old man as he bowed slightly. This caused a look of admiration to flash in the eyes of the medicine sovereign. If it was an ordinary person encountering such a matter, they would definitely try to distance themselves from it. But since Qin Wentian thanked the old man, it meant that he, Qin Wentian, had a part to play in the death of that elder of the royal sacred sect. Only to see the old man staring at Qin Wentian as his palms trembled slightly. However, such a minute movement naturally went unnoticed by others. That deep gaze of his actually caused Qin Wentian to be unable to see through it. For an instant, Qin Wentian even had a feeling that the gaze of the old man was filled with gentleness and warmth. But naturally, it was only for an instant. Very swiftly, the old man's gaze turned as calm as stagnant water, with no fluctuations at all as he lightly nodded his head. This caused Qin Wentian to speculate that the other party might have acted because of the medicine sovereign. At this moment, the gaze of that old man shifted onto the group from Grand Shang. His brows twitched as a faint killing intent flickered within. Momentarily, the bodies of those from Grand Shang trembled as they decisively turned and fled. This old man even dared to kill an elder of the royal sacred sect. If he wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. It was just that this old man disdained to act. How would they dare to remain here? Right now, they only had a single thought in their minds. They had to report this matter to the royal sacred sect. The death of an elder should be sufficient to shake the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect. As the absolute hegemon of the royal sacred region, they couldn't tolerate this matter. That old man and Qin Wentian both had to pay with their lives. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over in a certain direction only to see a similarly cold beam of light shooting towards him. It was none other than Disher. He initially planned to kill Qin Wentian on the spot after exiting the immortal martial realm. So what if you are the top ranker of the immortal martial realm? If you die, so what if your talent is high? But now, Disher knew that it was impossible for him to kill Qin Wentian. How could Qin Wentian not have thoughts of killing Disher? Both of them had the same thoughts. It was just that Disher's strength was many times stronger compared to Shang Tong. His cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and he had comprehended several innate techniques from the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian was confident that he wouldn't be weaker than Shang Tong. But if he wanted to kill Disher by jumping levels, he couldn't be sure. After all, he didn't know how strong Disher was when he could unleash his full strength. In addition, when Qin Wentian killed Shang Tong earlier, he had already borrowed the power of others, offending the Grand Shang faction and even the royal sacred sect. This wasn't something that belonged to him personally. Now that he wanted to borrow the power of the medicine sovereign to deal with the Supreme D clan, it was simply too overboard. It was better for the grudge between him and Disher to be settled by themselves. How about setting a time? Qin Wentian's gaze was sharp, penetrating through space as he stared in the direction of Disher. As the sound of his voice faded, another wave of commotion arose. This fellow had just killed Shang Tong, and this sentence of his was undoubtedly a challenge to the era-suppressing heaven's chosen, Disher. Nobody would be so foolish as to think that Qin Wentian would set a time to drink and chat with Disher. This sentence was akin to a declaration of war. Would Disher accept the challenge? 3 months later, on the sacred battle platform. At that time, everyone in the royal sacred region can head there to witness the battle of the top ranker of my immortal martial realm, Disher coldly spoke, directly accepting the challenge. Time, 3 months later. Location, the sacred battle platform of the royal sacred region. The sacred battle platform, seems like there's going to be a good show to watch. The hearts of the spectators mused. The name of the sacred battle platform resounded throughout the entire royal sacred region. It was the peak battle platform in the royal sacred region. If one wanted to fight on the sacred battle platform, one must have an outstanding battle record and extraordinary fame. Over there, one could often witness the rise of some geniuses. Fine. Qin Wentian only replied with a single word. Agreed. 3 months later, Qin Wentian would be able to stabilize his cultivation base as well as absorb all his gains from the immortal martial realm. The sacred battle platform would be the place where Di Shi would die. The killing intent in Di Shi's eyes sharpened. He swept his gaze over the crowd as he tyrannically spoke. 3 months later, Di Shi shall invite all the geniuses at the Heavenly Dipper realm to gather on the sacred battle platform. At that time, we shall see who is unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. His voice reverberated through the air, indicating his ambition. He wanted to be unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Right now, Di Shi's cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and in addition to the fact that he was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, he could indeed contend for the title of the strongest among the Heavenly Dipper realm. Di Shi wants to contend for the title of the strongest in Heavenly Dipper, while the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, wants to challenge for the title of era-suppressing geniuses. Not only that, the location is set to be on the sacred battle platform. How exciting! Many mused in their hearts. The events that happened in the immortal martial realm today were sufficient to cause great waves of commotion in the royal sacred region. 3 months later, I'll be waiting for you to send yourself to death. Di Shi flicked his sleeves and departed. The experts from the Supreme Di clan glanced at Qin Wentian. Although they wanted to kill Qin Wentian to avenge Diyu, it was clear that they couldn't do so. They could only leave. 3 months later, let's hope Di Shi wins and slays Qin Wentian. If not, if they allowed Qin Wentian to mature, he might really become a great enemy in the future. Junior brother Qin, let's return to the Battle Sword sect. Duan Han walked up and spoke to Qin Wentian. The implications of the commotion today were too great, and Qin Wentian would surely be at the heart of it all. Only by returning to the Battle Sword sect would he be safe. As long as he returned to the Battle Sword sect, no matter how great the commotion was, the sect would help Qin Wentian to endure it, even if the pressure came from the royal sacred sect. In addition, the Battle Sword sect could help Qin Wentian inquire about the opinions of the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect on this matter. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He was a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, he would naturally return to the Battle Sword sect. His gaze turned in the direction of Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing walked up and pulled Qin Wentian's hand before turning her head to look at the medicine sovereign. That soul-stirring countenance of hers caused the medicine sovereign to be unable to bear to separate the two of them. Return to the medicine sovereign valley with me. The medicine sovereign's beard fluttered as he glared at Mo Qingqing. This lass had forgotten her master the moment she found a lover. No. Mo Qingqing stubbornly stared at the medicine sovereign as she lightly shook her head. This was the first time she said the word no to the medicine sovereign. It wasn't that Mo Qingqing wanted to disobey the medicine sovereign. It was just that after losing her memories, it wasn't easy for her to reunite with Qin Wentian, and after that, they parted ways in the immortal martial realm. How could she bear to part with him again? In addition, the commotion had already started. She naturally hoped to stay by Qin Wentian's side. Qin Wentian could feel the warmth of Mo Qingqing's dainty hand. He also tightened his grip, feeling warmth in his heart. You want to follow him to the Battle Sword sect? He's now the top ranker of the immortal martial realm with a cultivation base at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Don't you want to raise your own strength? Even if you are proficient in alchemy, if your cultivation base isn't up to par, your pill concoction abilities would still be limited. The medicine sovereign's eyes widened as he spoke in a depressed manner. Naturally, he was reminding Mo Qingqing not to forget her cultivation or the gap between her and Qin Wentian would be widened. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a look of contemplation. She naturally didn't want to be a burden and hoped that she would be able to help Qin Wentian. However, she still couldn't bear to let go of Qin Wentian's hand. I will naturally release you 3 months later. The medicine sovereign stared at the pitiful expression on his beautiful disciple's face. He couldn't help but to feel helpless. This lass was truly incurable. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. She glanced at Qin Wentian only to see Qin Wentian pulling on her hand as he nodded his head. Qingqing, during these 3 months, I will also be in closed-door seclusion. You should follow Senior Medicine Sovereign back to the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Okay. Mo Qingqing nodded. Upon seeing this scene, the Medicine Sovereign was so angered that his beard flew about wildly. He glared fiercely at Qin Wentian. There was no justice in this world. He didn't listen to his master's words, yet the words of his lover were so effective. Let's go. The Medicine Sovereign speechlessly spoke. Mo Qingqing reluctantly let go of Qin Wentian's hand. After which, she walked to the side of the Medicine Sovereign and soared through the air. Mo Qingqing, who was in the air, turned her head back and stared at Qin Wentian. Their gazes intersected, filled with longing. Abruptly, Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly, causing the hearts of countless to tremble. Before they parted, she still wanted to leave behind a smile for Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian, come back with me. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign walked over. He naturally wanted to ensure Qin Wentian's safety. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He stared at Fan Lu and the others. Senior, I wish to bring my friends along as well. Sure, all of you can go to the Battle Sword sect as guests. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign naturally wouldn't be so unreasonable. Now that Qin Wentian's status was extraordinary, how could he stop him from bringing his friends to the Battle Sword sect as guests? Wentian. A gentle voice drifted over. Qin Wentian glanced at Lin Xian only to see her beautiful eyes filled with a smile. After we part this time, sir, don't forget about Xian. We shall meet again on the sacred battle platform 3 months later. After speaking, Lin Xian's graceful steps shifted as she left together with those from the Celestial Maiden sect. This caused countless people to cast envious gazes at Qin Wentian. How unreasonable was this? Mo Qingqing's love for him had already touched their hearts, yet Lin Xian was still trying to provoke their fragile hearts. Let's go. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign and the other experts from the Battle Sword sect waved their hands as sword chi rose up into the air. Everyone stepped onto the sword beams, and after which, they all soared through the air and departed. Countless gazes stared at the departing silhouette of the young man, but in their hearts, they were all thinking that the immortal martial realm was the place where Qin Wentian rose to fame. In the future, he would surely be the most outstanding talent in the royal sacred region. How would his story be written in the future? Numerous silhouettes soared through the air, the 8 era-suppressing geniuses all departed as well. The immortal martial realm finally quieted down, only that gigantic monument with so many names engraved on it remained there, unchanged for 10 years. As the crowd departed, Qin Wentian's name began to circulate throughout the entire royal sacred region. Chapter 608. Outside the Battle Sword sect, sword chi whistled through the air. Many people in the sect inclined their heads, only to see a group of silhouettes riding on flying swords, flying over. These were none other than the group that had just returned from the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian stepped on the whistling sword chi, stopping in the air above the ancient peak of the Battle Sword sect. Over there, a snow-white silhouette flew over, akin to a bolt of white lightning, leaping into Qin Wentian's embrace. Its snow-white body unceasingly nuzzled against Qin Wentian's. Little rascal, long time no see. Fan Lu stared at Little Rascal as he stretched out his hand and flicked Little Rascal's forehead. Little Rascal inclined his head, glaring at Fan Lu. Opening his mouth, he spat out a few words, damn. Fatty, eh. Black lines instantly appeared on Fan Li's face. This little rascal actually knew how to speak. Its immature voice was filled with a hint of cuteness, causing Qin Wentian to involuntarily burst out laughing. Boss, you must have taught him this, right? Fan Lu was speechless. He harshly rapped Little Rascal's forehead. Little Rascal bared its fangs and brandished its claws. Fatty, you are courting death. Qin Wentian laughed, carrying Little Rascal in his arms as he walked forward. In front of him, a beautiful silhouette could be seen quietly standing there. Her slender figure, as well as her breathtaking countenance, attracted the gazes of many. Qin Wentian walked to the side of the beautiful silhouette, smiling warmly as he stared at her. Qin glanced at Qin Wentian as her melodious voice rang out, I came out today to walk around. I won't feel so bored if I walk around more. Qin Wentian stared at the maiden in front of him. She was still a woman of few words. She lied. Little Rascal's head popped out from Qin Wentian's embrace as he stared at Qin. She came here every day. What a sin. Fan Lu slapped his forehead, this was too much of a blow. Qin Wentian blinked as he stared at Qin only to see that Qin's countenance didn't change at all. She coldly glanced at Little Rascal before sending out a slap. Little Rascal hurriedly retreated into Qin Wentian's embrace, causing Qin's slap to miss. Upon seeing Qin Wentian staring at her, a strange light flickered in the calm eyes of Qin as she replied, Little Rascal loves to talk nonsense. Yes. Qin Wentian nodded, still looking into Qin's eyes. I'm going back. Qin's countenance changed slightly. After speaking, she immediately turned and departed at an extremely fast speed. Staring at her beautiful back view, Qin Wentian lowered his head and stared at Little Rascal in his embrace as he gently asked, What else do you know? Here, there were people chasing after her, but they were all beaten away by her. Little Rascal mumbled, causing Qin Wentian to perspire. Who would be so audacious as to chase after Qin? There's one more person, she can't win against him. That person looks at her every day. Can you chase him away? Little Rascal stared at Qin Wentian with its big eyes, causing Qin Wentian to be extremely happy. He rubbed Little Rascal's head and laughed, this is the first time I found you so adorable. I will nourish you later. Okay, I want to evolve. Little Rascal spoke in a baby-like voice. The nourishment he was referring to was naturally the power of Qin Wentian's bloodline. Little Rascal could be said to have been raised by Qin Wentian's blood. Wentian, I will go and meet with senior brother Ling Tian first. You should go back and have a good rest. At this moment, the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign who was in the air spoke to Qin Wentian. He naturally had to inform Sword Sovereign Ling Tian and the others about what happened in the Immortal Martial Realm. As for the matter regarding Qin Wentian, it would still require the upper echelons of the Battle Sword sect to meet with each other. Right, many thanks, Sword Sovereign. Qin Wentian nodded his head in thanks. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign nodded his head as the group of them soared through the air. Ji Feishue also went to report to his master, Sword Sovereign Ling Tian. Since they had already arrived at the Battle Sword sect, the crowd soon dispersed. Yi Lingshuang and Duan Han helped to arrange the lodgings for Fan Lu and the others. Their lodgings were all near Qin Wentian's lodgings. The group of them sat together and chatted for a few hours before the sky darkened. Qin Wentian returned to his lodgings and started to organize his spoils from the Immortal Martial Realm. For this trip to the Immortal Martial Realm, he could be considered to be the one with the greatest rewards. He needed time to consolidate his foundations. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art, such a powerful cultivation art, had to be cultivated step by step. Not only that, according to his thoughts, he should use the Fiend God Body Refinement Art as a supplement to it, allowing him to unleash even greater power. However, if he wanted to cultivate the Fiend God Body Refinement Art, he would need a large amount of heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures to aid his cultivation. This was also the difficulty in cultivating it. Other than this, he also needed to slowly comprehend the tyrannical innate techniques he obtained from the stone monuments. For example, the golden rock art, star-seizing art, illusionary shadow art, etc. Not only that, during combat, these powerful innate techniques all required a terrifying amount of astral energy to be unleashed. The stronger the attack, the more astral energy it would consume. It was extremely difficult for someone at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper to use so many powerful techniques. Luckily, he had 4 Yuanfu, which gave him an advantage when compared to ordinary people. In the night sky, the astral light was exceptionally resplendent, cascading down unceasingly from the heavens, cascading down onto the place where Qin Wentian was seated, causing the entire space to be bathed in the starlight. Qin Wentian sat there for a total of 7 days. After 7 days, when he opened his eyes, the air was filled with traces of coldness. Early in the morning, the mountain rampart was covered in white mist, the scenery was exceptionally beautiful. The gentle sound of a flute drifted into his ears, containing traces of a melodious melody. Qin Wentian quietly listened to it. The melody was graceful and contained hints of heartfelt emotions within. It's that person, he's here again. How annoying. Little Rascal ran to the side of Qin Wentian, grabbing onto Qin Wentian's arm. Qin Wentian instantly understood who Little Rascal was referring to. Most probably, it was referring to the person Qin Er couldn't defeat. Go, let's go take a look. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered and soon after, he saw the person who was playing the flute. This person was clad in white and was standing on top of a gigantic boulder on the mountain wall. He was playing the flute in the direction of Qin Er's residence, exuding a carefree and unrestrained aura. Qin Er stood on the roof, her countenance was filled with coldness, as though she was unhappy. The cultivation base of this white-robed figure was extremely high, at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, and was also a disciple of the Battle Sword sect. No wonder even Qin Er couldn't defeat him. After all, Qin Er's current cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, and she had just stepped into this realm not too long ago. Qin Er. Qin Wentian's silhouette appeared beside Qin Er. Qin Er glanced at him before turning her gaze onto the silhouette on the mountain rampart, her countenance turning even colder. Sir, don't you think it's very ungentlemanly of you to harass others like this? Qin Wentian stared at the white-robed figure as he spoke in a clear voice. His voice contained the humming of swords within, causing ear-piercing sounds to echo in the air. The melody of the flute was forcibly interrupted, and the white-robed figure turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian as he emotionlessly spoke, "Sincerity can split open metal and stone. What does my actions have to do with you? She's my friend, so it naturally has something to do with me. Please don't come here again." Qin Wentian continued. Just a friend? In that case, what qualifications do you have to obstruct me from wooing junior sister Qin Er? The words of this person didn't hold back at all. It was clear that he wanted to woo Qin Er. Laughter rang out as several silhouettes appeared on the mountain rampart. One of the female disciples giggled, "Senior brother Han, junior sister Qin Er is so beautiful, all those who wooed her have been beaten up by her. I'm afraid your chances are slim, but I'll still support you. Junior sister Qin Er is as mesmerizing as a celestial maiden, how many people wouldn't be moved by her? I actually hope that senior brother Han can succeed in wooing junior sister Qin Er to our Lone Mountain faction." Another person spoke as he glanced at Qin Wentian. This person was none other than Qin Wentian, the one whose name had recently caused a commotion in the Battle Sword sect, the one who obtained the top ranker of the Immortal martial realm. All of them wanted to take a look at him as well. "Wentian, these people are all disciples from the Lone Mountain Sword Sovereign's faction." It was unknown when Yiling Shuang had arrived, but it was unknown when she spoke to Qin Wentian. The Battle Sword sect doesn't forbid disciples from fighting each other, right? Qin Wentian asked. He naturally knew that Qing Er liked peace and quiet. Back then, she chose this place because there would be fewer people disturbing her. However, these people didn't have the slightest bit of etiquette and were causing a ruckus here. Although Qing Er didn't say it clearly, one could tell that she was extremely uncomfortable just by looking at her cold countenance. Naturally, it's fine as long as you know your limits. The Battle Sword sect encourages competition, the elders won't interfere. Yi Lingshuang nodded. If that's the case, that's good. Qin Wentian nodded lightly as he turned to Qing Er. Can I help you chase them away? Qing Er started, she stared at Qin Wentian as her eyes flickered. After which, she nodded her head lightly, sure. Qin Wentian flicked his sleeves as he stepped out, instantly standing in front of the experts on the mountain rampart. Staring at that white-robed figure, he commanded, "Scram." Senior brother Han held his flute in his hands as he emotionlessly glanced at Qin Wentian. Right now in the Battle Sword sect, Qin Wentian's name was known by everyone. He returned with the top ranker of the Immortal martial realm, causing huge waves of commotion in the Battle Sword sect. How could he not know? This man killed Shang Tong and challenged Di Shi to a duel. An elder of the Royal Sacred Sect had died because of him. Senior brother Han, he's preparing to use you to establish his might. That female from earlier giggled as she stared at Qin Wentian. Senior brother Han, although your cultivation base is high, this man's name can shake the entire Royal Sacred region. If we fight, our fellow disciples won't say that you are bullying the weak. Another voice drifted over. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over to the experts on the mountain rampart. There were a total of 5 of them. Other than senior brother Han, there were 3 at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper and 1 at the 7th level. Golden light flashed as astral energy enveloped Qin Wentian, causing him to resemble a golden rock with golden wings. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at the experts before him. He then coldly spoke, "All of you can come at me together." As the sound of his voice faded, the wings on Qin Wentian's back flapped as he floated higher and higher into the air. The light radiating from him grew more and more resplendent, causing the 5 silhouettes on the stone rampart to stiffen. Their battle intent gushing forth in torrents. From afar, the perception of several disciples of the Battle Sword sect gushed over, paying close attention to this battle. Qing Er still stood on the rooftop, her cold eyes staring at Qin Wentian's back. Her beautiful eyes were calm and tranquil. Chapter 609. Although Qin Wentian was alone, the spectators from the Battle Sword sect didn't feel that the 5 of them had the advantage. Everyone was very clear on the weight of the top ranker of the Immortal martial realm. There were already rumors circulating in the outside world that Qin Wentian's name had to be added to the list of era-suppressing geniuses. However, the majority of the spectators were still waiting for the battle to take place on the sacred battle platform. If Qin Wentian defeated Di Shi, everything would naturally fall into place. The spectators only saw a golden glow radiating from Qin Wentian, enveloping this entire space. The wings on his back had already solidified, transforming into the wings of a true great rock. Qin Wentian's entire body was enveloped by the glow of a golden-winged great rock, as though he was about to transform into a true great rock. The golden rock art and fiend transformation art he cultivated in the ancient monument were used simultaneously. Naturally he would be able to produce many transformations. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by as a golden bolt of lightning arced through the air, shooting towards the mountain rampart ahead with an astonishing speed. At the same time, a terrifying surge of bloodline power gushed forth as demonic chi towered up into the skies. Trap him. Upon seeing Qin Wentian's lightning-fast speed, one of the spectators commanded in a low voice. Momentarily, an 8th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign released his astral soul and astral nova. An incomparably gigantic ancient vine blotted out the skies as it shot towards Qin Wentian, wanting to bind the entire space. At the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, the power of an astral nova was already extremely powerful. The radius of the vine's envelopment was extremely vast, it could easily bind people within. Such a control-type astral nova was extremely dangerous. Once one was bound by it, they would only be waiting for death. Voila! A crisp sound rang out, the ancient vine was directly sliced apart by the golden light, breaking apart inch by inch, causing the countenance of the spectator to drastically change. The slicing power of those golden wings was definitely sufficient to directly slice apart his astral nova. It was too sharp, such an attack power caused him to feel fear in his heart. Boom! A palm imprint actually transformed into a gigantic ancient mountain, smashing downwards towards Qin Wentian. The golden rock didn't pause at all. The ancient mountain shattered, and in the blink of an eye, Qin Wentian dashed towards one of the experts on the mountain rampart. This expert had a cultivation base at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and it seemed as though nobody's attacks could restrict his movements. The countenance of that person drastically changed. After which, he only saw Qin Wentian blasting out with his palms, a resplendent beam of runic light flashed as it smashed downwards. With a deafening boom, that person was smashed into the mountain, his body completely submerged within. Qin Wentian wasn't even on the same level, even if his cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. The countenances of the others stiffened when they saw this scene. With such combat prowess, 8th level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns were nothing more than trash in front of him. He could crush them with a single strike, how could they even fight? Brilliant light illuminated the skies as numerous resplendent astral souls and astral novas erupted forth. Evidently, all of them were prepared to go all out. But at this instant, a boundless golden light radiated from Qin Wentian. In their vision, there were actually several silhouettes of Qin Wentian, all of them had a pair of golden wings on their backs. In their vision, there was only the incomparably arrogant Qin Wentian. Boom! The thousands of silhouettes all unleashed their attacks at the same instant, blasting outwards in all directions, wanting to destroy everything. The remaining 4 people all felt a wave of palm imprints slamming towards them. Their countenances drastically changed as they frenziedly defended. Rumbling sounds rang out as a few deep pits appeared on the mountain rampart. 3 of them were directly smashed into the mountain rampart as they coughed out blood. Only the person who was pursuing Qin Air managed to block this attack. His countenance turned ashen. The sound of wind whistled by, only to see Qin Wentian floating in front of him. The golden wings on his back were flapping wildly in the air, and with every flap, a raging wind would kick up, causing sand and gravel to fly about. That pair of incomparably arrogant demonic eyes stared at him, containing a terrifying coldness within. He quietly floated in the air, yet he was like a lofty sovereign king. Scram! From today onwards, you are not allowed to appear before Qin Air. Qin Wentian coldly spat out. The coldness in his voice permeated the air, as though he wasn't only speaking to the person in front of him. If it wasn't for the sake of protecting him, Qin Air wouldn't even have come to the Battle Sword sect. In the past, she had always been by his side, yet she didn't allow him to see her. That maiden was like a snow lotus on a mountain of ice. She was always so quiet, causing people to not have the heart to disturb her. Yet these people actually dared to harass Qin Air. How could he be so angry? The countenance of the white-robed man turned ashen as he coldly snorted. After which, he turned and departed. The other 4 also crawled out from the pit in the mountain rampart, all of them were injured to varying degrees. They all left with their tails between their legs, no longer having the carefree demeanor they had when they spoke earlier. This battle was truly too embarrassing, they were simply trampled on. The spectators from the Battle Sword sect retracted their perception, yet they were all sighing in their hearts. Even a 9th level Heavenly Dipper expert didn't dare to fight against Qin Wentian head-on. With a single word, scram, Qin Wentian directly turned and left. Evidently, he knew the disparity between them. The combat prowess that Qin Wentian casually displayed was truly too shocking. The burial ground of the immortal martial realm was truly a place where geniuses of the younger generation were buried. After Qin Wentian walked out from the immortal martial realm, he seemed to have undergone a magnificent transformation. Right now, he was using the fiend transformation art in addition to the power of his bloodline. The aura he exuded had already reached the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. Suppressing 8th level Heavenly Dipper experts wasn't a problem at all, and in addition to the wild explosive power he exuded, unless it was a demon-level genius at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, they would only be able to retreat in fear. Di Shi had already declared that he wanted to fight for the title of unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Since Qin Wentian challenged Di Shi, how could he possibly be weak? Qin Wentian retracted his aura and returned to the side of Qing'er. However, he only saw that Qing'er's countenance was as cold as ever. She merely cast a glance at him before returning to her own residence. This scene caused Qin Wentian to be stunned. It seemed like there was something wrong with Qing'er. "Qing'er, what's wrong?" Qin Wentian followed after her. Qing'er didn't reply and continued walking quietly. She came to a pavilion in the courtyard and stared at the misty clouds in the distance. It was unknown what she was thinking. Qin Wentian could faintly sense that Qing'er's mood was somewhat low. He didn't say anything and simply stood quietly by her side. All along, it had always been Qing'er who had been silently protecting him. Now that his strength had grown much stronger, he naturally felt extremely happy in his heart to be able to fight for Qing'er's sake. The cool breeze of the morning blew over, ruffling Qing'er's hair. She lowered her head as she spoke in a melodious voice, "I've already completed the task Master wanted me to do. In the future, you don't need me anymore." Her melodious and calm voice drifted into the depths of Qin Wentian's heart, causing him to feel a piercing pain in his heart. "In the future, you don't need me anymore." This simple sentence actually caused Qin Wentian to feel a trace of pain in his heart. Was Qing'er really going to leave? That's right, the reason why Qing'er stayed by his side was because she obeyed Fairy Qingmei's words. Throughout these years, although Qing'er rarely appeared, whenever he needed help the most, the first person to appear would always be this cold maiden. She always didn't like to speak, to the extent that people would forget about her existence. However, how could Qin Wentian ignore her? It had been 10 years, ever since he was a youth in Chu, she had always been by his side, quietly protecting him. Up until now, Qin Wentian had long since gotten used to her being by his side, to the extent that he had forgotten that there would be a day when she would leave. Since she had completed the task Fairy Qingmei entrusted to her, what other reason would she have to stay? The two of them fell silent. Qin Wentian stared into the distance as the cold wind gusted on his body. He couldn't help but to laugh at himself, this wind is really cold. Qing'er's dainty hands grabbed onto the corner of her robes before loosening her grip. Turning back, she stared at Qin Wentian. She was still as beautiful as ever, that ice-cold countenance of hers was flawless. She stared at Qin Wentian, only to see Qin Wentian squeezing out a smile at her before shifting his gaze away. He didn't dare to look at her face. Qing'er stared at Qin Wentian, and after a few moments, she stated, "I won't leave." Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. He walked to the side of Qing'er as the light in his eyes returned, "Really? This place is actually quite suitable for cultivation." Qing'er nodded her head lightly. After which, she turned and walked towards her room. Staring at her departing back, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he heaved a sigh of relief. Qing'er seemed to be the princess of a major power. If she left, Qin Wentian wasn't sure if he would still be able to see her again in this lifetime. How could he bear to leave her behind? Who? Exhaling deeply, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he returned to his residence. Only to see Lin Shuai and Duan Han here. Senior brother Lin. Qin Wentian smiled at Lin Shuai. Seeing that you were at junior sister Qing'er's place, I didn't want to disturb you. Master wanted me to pass a message to you. Let's go to the courtyard to talk. Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian. Right. Qin Wentian nodded. Since Sword Sovereign Ling Tian wanted Lin Shuai to look for him, there must be an extremely important matter. In the courtyard, Lin Shuai and Qin Wentian sat down. Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian, junior brother Qin. That elder who died in the immortal martial realm had an extremely high status in the Grand Shang faction. Because he wasn't an ordinary elder, he was proficient in weaponsmithing and his status was ranked at the top of the Grand Shang faction. His death caused the Grand Shang faction in the Royal Sacred Sect to be enraged. They wanted our Battle Sword sect to hand you over and even wanted to target the Medicine Sovereign. Great waves appeared in Qin Wentian's heart. Back then, he had already predicted that the death of that elder would cause a huge commotion. The internal affairs of the Royal Sacred Sect are extremely complicated. The competition between the various factions is extremely intense, but the faction with the most authority is none other than the core faction. They directly listen to the commands of the Sacred Emperor and the matter regarding the Medicine Sovereign was suppressed by the core faction. Hence, all the pressure was shifted onto you. The core faction naturally wouldn't be willing to hand the Medicine Sovereign over. For the sake of you, the Royal Sacred Sect caused a huge commotion. For the sake of you, the Royal Sacred Sect caused a huge commotion. Lin Shuai bitterly smiled as he continued, and what's even worse is that the other factions aren't too friendly towards you. For example, the Violet Thunder Sect, Great Earth Sect, etc. However, for the sake of this, our ancestor, who is also the previous sect leader of the Battle Sword sect, spoke out. If there's anyone who dares to bully the weak to deal with you, it would be equivalent to declaring war against the Battle Sword faction. The weight of this sentence is extremely heavy. At the same time, he also sent a message back to the Royal Sacred Sect. Do you want to join the Royal Sacred Sect now? If you do so, it would be much safer. Lin Shuai asked. Chapter 610. When Qin Wentian heard Lin Shuai's words, he couldn't help but feel gratitude towards the ancestor of the Battle Sword sect whom he had never met before. One could very well imagine how powerful the ancestor's words were when he said, if there's anyone bullying the weak to deal with you, it's equivalent to declaring war on the Battle Sword sect. This meant that at the very least in public, any celestial phenomenon ascendants who wanted to act against him would have to think twice before doing so. As for dealing with him in the dark, Qin Wentian didn't doubt it at all. This was a given. Leaving aside that elder of the Royal Sacred Sect, the death of Shang Tong from the Grand Shang Empire was already sufficient for the Grand Shang Empire to assassinate him. The elders of the Battle Sword sect as well as Lin Shuai clearly understood this, hence they asked him if he was willing to join the Royal Sacred Sect. If he chose to join the Royal Sacred Sect now, it would undoubtedly be the best method to avoid being targeted. However, if he chose to join the Royal Sacred Sect like this, Qin Wentian was filled with reluctance in his heart. It was like he was running away from something. Also, maybe because of the death of that elder, the Royal Sacred Sect didn't send him an invitation. Although Qin Wentian didn't care about face, at the very least, it would show that the Royal Sacred Sect valued him. If not, if the Royal Sacred Sect didn't value him enough and felt that he was responsible for the death of that elder, what was the point of him joining the Royal Sacred Sect then? Why didn't he choose the Immortal Martial Realm? After all, the Royal Sacred Sect wasn't part of the Battle Sword faction. The Battle Sword sect was only a single faction. Senior Lin Shuai, I have no intentions of joining the Royal Sacred Sect yet, Qin Wentian calmly spoke, his words causing a strange light to flicker in Lin Shuai's eyes. Qin Wentian didn't say that he didn't intend to join temporarily, but rather, he didn't intend to join yet. This sentence contained another layer of meaning. It was hard to say if he, Qin Wentian, would be willing to join the Royal Sacred Sect or not. So what if they were a transcendent power of the Royal Sacred Region? Qin Wentian had a father who could kill so many that even devils and immortals would weep. He knew that even if he joined the Royal Sacred Sect, it would only be a temporary period and he would have to leave sooner or later. Since this was the case, if the royal sacred sect didn't value him, what was he going to join for? Hence, it was hard to say if he was willing or not. The royal sacred sect was challenging him, but wasn't he challenging the royal sacred sect as well? After being stunned for a moment, Lin Shuai nodded and patted Qin Wentian on the shoulder. You have courage. Senior brother supports you. During this period of time, you should focus on your cultivation. I will bring your words to master and ask for his opinion. Thank you, senior brother Lin. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded. Lin Shuai then left. After Lin Shuai left, Qin Wentian didn't immediately enter closed-door seclusion. Instead, he took out his spatial brush and started inscribing new spatial scrolls. Although right now his name shook the entire royal sacred region, there were still many dangers awaiting him. Naturally, he had to make some preparations. At the same time, he also needed to inscribe some spatial scrolls for Qin Lu and the others to use. This time around, Qin Wentian inscribed quite a number of spatial scrolls for Fan Lu and the others. After which, he entered closed-door seclusion again, cultivating the innate techniques and cultivation arts he obtained in the immortal martial realm. Although 3 months of time was extremely short, he would still do his best to increase his strength by a few notches. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed since the end of the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian, who was in the battle sword sect, was still living a peaceful life. But in the royal sacred region, the frequency of his name appearing was the highest, even surpassing Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. During this period of time, many things happened in the royal sacred region. For example, countless powers extended olive branches to Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. This was especially so for Gu Lufeng. After all, he was still alone and had never joined any power before. Naturally, the various powers wanted to recruit him. And the one that caused the most commotion was undoubtedly the invitation from the royal sacred sect. As the top 3 rankers of the immortal martial realm, they had no connection with any of the major powers in the royal sacred sect. Hence, there were quite a few waves of experts from the royal sacred sect who wanted to invite them over. Finally, when the core faction extended an invitation to Hua Taishu finally agreed to join the royal sacred sect. This matter caused a huge commotion. Hua Taishu of the Great Emptiness sect joined the core faction of the royal sacred sect, and he even became the personal disciple of a character with an extremely high status. His status was many times higher compared to Junyu back then. One could very well imagine what kind of commotion it would cause if this news was circulated back to Grand Xia. Most probably, the Hua faction would definitely be in an uproar. The genius of the transcendent power Hua clan of the Moon Continent, the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings back then, Hua Taishu had finally achieved an unprecedented achievement in the history of the Hua clan. Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu were ranked equally on the immortal martial realm monument. In addition, Gu Liufeng's fame far surpassed Hua Taishu. Since Hua Taishu received an invitation from the core faction, Gu Lufeng, who didn't join any of the major powers, naturally received the same invitation as well. However, Gu Lufeng didn't agree nor reject. He only said that he needed some time to consider and the royal sacred sect wouldn't force him. However, there was a rumor circulating around the royal sacred region that there were people who saw Gu Lufeng in the immortal martial city. He seemed to be in the immortal martial realm, and the reason was unknown. Only after a long period of time did people start to feel regret. That was actually the last time Gu Lufeng appeared in the royal sacred region. From then on, Gu Lufeng completely disappeared, his whereabouts unknown. It was unknown how many outstanding female cultivators felt sadness in their hearts. The calm lake severs the moon, he shoots the 9 heavens, the incomparably handsome white-robed Gu Lufeng, could it be that they would never see him again? The other top rankers of the immortal martial realm also received invitations. Compared to these people, the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, was completely ignored. However, everyone could understand that it wasn't that the attractiveness of Qin Wentian couldn't be compared to Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. It was because his situation was unique. Firstly, as a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, he had already severed all thoughts of joining the major powers in the Royal Sacred Region other than the Royal Sacred Sect. The only power that had the qualifications to invite Qin Wentian was the power that invited Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu, the core faction of the Royal Sacred Region. However, an elder of the Royal Sacred Sect died because of Qin Wentian. There were many people in the Royal Sacred Sect who wanted Qin Wentian's life. Under such a unique circumstance, it wasn't strange that Qin Wentian didn't receive an invitation. The core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect also didn't directly issue an order to punish Qin Wentian. This indicated that the core faction had already adopted a laissez-faire attitude. In the Battle Sword sect, when the news of Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng was transmitted to Qin Wentian's ears, his gaze turned to the horizons as great waves rose in his heart. He knew that as to why Gu Lufeng appeared in the Immortal Martial City, it was because he had already made his choice. He wanted to join a power of the Immortal Martial Realm and leave the Royal Sacred Region. As for Hua Taishu, he chose the Royal Sacred Sect and not the Immortal Martial Realm. Maybe, his clan in Grand Xia had influenced his decision. From the conversation he had with Hua Taishu back then, Qin Wentian understood that Hua Taishu couldn't let go of his clan. Hence, he chose to temporarily stay behind. These two absolute geniuses chose different paths. In that case, where would Qin Wentian's path be? Wentian, Hua Taishu has already made his choice. What about you? What do you plan to do? Ouyang Guangsheng stood beside Qin Wentian as he asked in a low voice. I'll head to the sacred battle platform to complete the arranged battle. After that, I'll make a trip back to Grand Xia to complete the matters I've yet to complete. After that, I'll make a trip back to my hometown and hold a wedding ceremony with Qincheng. At that time, maybe I'll make a decision. Qin Wentian mumbled, a warm smile could be seen on his face. He and Qincheng had already consummated their marriage, how could he not give Qincheng a status and hold a wedding ceremony? He wanted to set the location of the wedding in their hometown, the Chu country. It was the place where they met and knew each other. It's about time for me to return. Jiang Ting is still waiting for me, I owe her. Ouyang Guangsheng laughed. Upon thinking of Jiang Ting, the resolute lines on his face softened. Time passes so quickly. Qin Wentian sighed. In the blink of an eye, they had both experienced the vicissitudes of life and death, the vicissitudes of life. He could still remember the first time they met in the Celestial Lake Palace. That's right, time passes so quickly. Who would have thought that the young man from the Celestial Lake Palace back then would already have such accomplishments today? Back then, you traversed 10,000 miles and transformed into a demon, destroying the Pill Emperor Hall with a single sword strike. Now, your name has already shaken the entire Royal Sacred Region. Do you have any confidence in returning to Grand Xia? Ouyang Guangsheng smiled as he stared at Qin Wentian. If the demon sword is unleashed, who in Grand Xia would be able to stand against it? Qin Wentian laughed. However, I wonder if the demon sword that's currently embedded in the Pill Emperor Hall is willing to be used by me. Naturally, even if he didn't use the demon sword, he could still transform into a great rock and dominate Grand Xia. The demon sword might be a demon, but with you as its master, it wouldn't be a humiliation to it. Ouyang Guangsheng laughed uproariously. Wentian, when I marry Jiang Ting, it won't be a grand affair. But you have to be the witness for our marriage. Ouyang Guangsheng's words had a deeper meaning to them. In truth, back then when the Ouyang ancestor broke the promise between him and Qin Wentian because of Junyu, Ouyang Guangsheng already had a knot between him and the Ouyang aristocrat clan. After exiting the royal tomb, he returned to the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the Ouyang ancestor no longer passed the inheritance rights to him. If not, how could the marriage between the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the Jiang clan not be a grand affair? There was only one reason. This pair of lovers of the past were no longer blessed by the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Sure, I will. Qin Wentian seemed to have understood Ouyang Guangsheng's meaning. A smile appeared on his face as he silently mused in his heart that the wedding between Ouyang Guangsheng and Jiang Ting would definitely be blessed. Let's go for a stroll. Qin Wentian spoke as he slowly walked out. Where are we going? Ouyang Guangsheng followed after him. To the grass hut, comprehending the swords. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, he soared into the air. An instant later, outside the grass hut, on the ancient mountain peak, the bodies of many trembled violently as they stared at the young man, Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian is going to comprehend the swords for the second time. This news instantly circulated around. Right now, there wasn't a single person in the battle sword sect who didn't know that Qin Wentian had broken the record for comprehending the swords for the first time, comprehending 14 sword strikes. After obtaining the first rank in the immortal martial realm, how could Qin Wentian not cause a commotion when he entered the grass hut again? Chapter 611. On the ancient peak, more and more people gathered. All of them were staring at the silhouette of the young man walking towards the grass hut. The first time Qin Wentian came to the battle sword sect, he had comprehended 14 sword strikes, breaking the record of the grass hut. After so many days, he once again arrived at the grass hut. The 15 sword strikes of the grass hut, nobody under celestial phenomenon can comprehend it. Can Qin Wentian comprehend it? Many mused in their hearts. Qin Wentian had already comprehended 14 sword strikes. Right now, he had to start from the 15th sword strike. However, the 15th sword strike had the reputation of being impossible for anyone under celestial phenomenon to comprehend it. They wondered if Qin Wentian would be able to bring any surprises to them. Lin Shui arrived. He stared at the junior apprentice brother he had personally welcomed into the battle sword sect. This was the most outstanding junior apprentice brother he had met ever since he entered the sect. He wondered what surprises Qin Wentian would bring to him this time around. Yi Lingshuang arrived. Her attitude had already undergone a huge change compared to the first time they met. Back then, she couldn't stand the sight of Qin Wentian, feeling that he was extremely lecherous. Even little rascal dared to assault her sensitive spots. But this time around, she only had anticipation in her heart. Senior sister Lu, at this moment, a beautiful maiden appeared on the mountain peak opposite the grass hut. It was none other than Lu Bingyu. Her clear eyes stared at the silhouette before her. Bingyu. It was unknown when Ji Feishue appeared beside Lu Bingyu. Lu Bingyu glanced at him. She discovered that after returning from the immortal martial realm, her attitude towards Ji Feishue was completely different. There was no longer any trace of competition or admiration, there was only calmness. Such a transformation happened soundlessly. Feishue, you have to work hard. Junior sister Lu's cultivation base has already broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper after her closed-door seclusion. Lin Shui glanced at the two beside him and smiled. His words caused Ji Feishue's eyes to flicker as he cast a deep glance at Lu Bingyu. When Lu Bingyu was in Wu Mu's world monument, she was one of the few who could comprehend the energy of the stone rampart. Her outstanding talent was slowly being displayed. Li Hanyu also arrived. The expression she had when she stared at Qin Wentian was incomparably complicated. Back then, she had once looked down on him, but now, he couldn't even be bothered to look her in the eye. Or maybe, it could be said that Qin Wentian had never looked her in the eye before. If not, why would he directly slap her in the face? Back then in the immortal martial realm, she had cursed Qin Wentian with hatred in her heart. Yet, she discovered that Qin Wentian had walked all the way to the end, becoming the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. Such a feeling, other than herself, no one else could understand it. Other than the disciples of the Battle Sword sect, how many celestial phenomenon ascendants from the Battle Sword sect were spying on them? Qin Wentian stood in the grass hut, causing a huge commotion in the battle sword sect. Lu Bingyu had never experienced such treatment before, neither had Ji Feishuo. In the past 100 years, only Qin Wentian had ever experienced such treatment. At this moment, Qin Wentian had already started to comprehend the first 14 sword strikes. He had already comprehended the first 14 sword strikes, he only needed to comprehend it once more. Comprehending a sword strike was a kind of comprehension, a kind of understanding. Since he had already comprehended it once, the second time was naturally much easier. He directly walked up to the 15th sword strike. Once again, he saw the scene from back then. In front of Qin Wentian, there was a mountain rampart. This mountain rampart depicted a violent ancient demon that wanted to devour the heavens and destroy the earth. It was incomparably frenzied, as though it wanted to destroy everything. However, all of this was dissipated by a single sword strike. That sword landed in the middle of the evil dragon and demonic phoenix, instantly disintegrating the evil dragon, turning it into dust. Everything was destroyed. I could sense the existence of martial wills in the first 14 sword strikes. Even if it was a fusion of martial wills, I still managed to comprehend it in the end. However, only this sword strike. Is it really like what I thought it was previously, a fusion of martial wills at a deeper level? Qin Wentian mused. If it was truly a fusion of mandates at a deeper level, it would be extremely difficult for him to comprehend which mandates were fused together. There was a high possibility that he would return in failure, unable to comprehend the 15th sword strike. However, this time around, Qin Wentian had a strange feeling. This sword strike was extremely pure, so pure that it was merely a single type of energy. It wasn't a fusion of many different types of mandates. Naturally, there was also a possibility that it was a fusion of a completely new type of energy. Given his current strength, he wouldn't be able to sense it. Qin Wentian closed his eyes. It was as though the image on the rampart was directly imprinted into his mind, as he repeated that sword strike over and over again. If one doesn't step into celestial phenomenon, they won't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Qin Wentian mused. Celestial phenomenon, what was a celestial phenomenon? In the celestial phenomenon realm, one's comprehension of mandates had to reach another level, surpassing the perfection boundary of the second level. This level was known as the true intent of a mandate. Truth, it referred to true comprehension. For example, the first level he comprehended was force, and the second level was void shockwave. But was there only these two transformations for his mandate of force? Clearly, there was still a third and fourth transformation. For example, gravity, the omnipresent force. Only by truly comprehending the mandate of force would one be able to step past this level and comprehend the true intent of the mandate of force. This step was already exceedingly difficult. It was unknown how many cultivators had tried to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Many of them spent their entire lives trying to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. But this was only one of the conditions to step into the celestial phenomenon realm. If one truly wanted to step into celestial phenomenon, they still had to convert their astral novas back into their astral souls, using their astral souls to form a constellation. For this step, one had to take the previous step as the foundation. Only by comprehending the true intent of a mandate would one be able to comprehend their own constellation. Constellations were all-encompassing, containing a myriad of transformations. At the same cultivation level, if one of them had an extraordinary constellation, he or she could easily suppress 10 or even 20 ordinary constellations. In fact, he or she might even be able to insta-kill them. This also meant that there were many who had no way to step into the celestial phenomenon realm in their entire lives. But when you were feeling complacent after stepping past that barrier, you would discover to your sorrow that the disparity between cultivators at the same level could be magnified to the point of despair. The more Qin Wentian understood, the more he understood how terrifying the disparity between cultivation levels was. Back then, if it wasn't for him transforming into a great rock and wielding the demon sword, the celestial phenomenon ascendants of the Pill Emperor Hall would be able to squash him to death as easily as squashing an ant. And precisely because of this, the Pill Emperor Hall missed the best opportunity to squash him to death, thinking that they could kill him anytime they wanted. That sword strike, could it be that the true intent of a mandate was infused into the sword? When Qin Wentian thought of the celestial phenomenon realm, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, it was impossible for one to comprehend the 15th sword strike. If the 15th sword strike was a true intent, Heavenly Dipper sovereigns naturally wouldn't be able to see through the essence of this sword strike. As Qin Wentian thought of this, he started to comprehend in this direction. He didn't think about whether this sword strike was a fusion of mandates or not. Closing his eyes tightly, that sword strike repeated itself thousands of times in his mind. Finally, he felt that his perception of the sword had slowed down. He could see more clearly, and he could see more clearly. Time flowed by unknowingly. Qin Wentian suddenly understood that for those who could complete the entire trial of comprehending the sword, how high would their comprehension abilities be? How could they not become a hero of their generation? A day later, the silhouettes on the ancient peak were still there. They stared at Qin Wentian, yet Qin Wentian still didn't move. Could it be that there was no way to comprehend the 15th sword strike after all? If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, they wouldn't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Was there really no way to break this iron rule? Many people sighed in their hearts. Seems like a miracle wouldn't happen. Qin Wentian was still immersed in his thoughts. In his mind, that sword strike grew even clearer. He could sense the power contained within that destructive sword strike. That speed, that lacerating might, that omnipresent power. If he had to find a mandate that was compatible with him, then it should be wind. The mandate of wind couldn't be described as a will, but rather, the true intent of the mandate of wind. This was because there were many different types of mandates contained within. The speed of the wind, the lacerating might of the wind, the misty wind, the omnipresence of the wind. Understood. Qin Wentian opened his eyes. After which, he placed his palms on the mountain rampart in front of him as his perception gushed forth. Instantly, a dazzling beam of sword light tore through the heavens and earth, humming unceasingly. At this moment, above the grass hut, sword chi gushed forth, ravaging the heavens and earth. The 15th sword strike, comprehended. He only used a single day. Awesome. Lin Shuai had a smile on his face. This junior brother of his had truly brought him a pleasant surprise. He was able to comprehend this sword strike when he was only at the Heavenly Dipper realm. In that case, in the eyes of others, celestial phenomenon was a heavenly mote. Maybe to Qin Wentian, it was only a matter of time. Since he could comprehend this sword strike, it meant that one day, he would be able to comprehend it himself. Wentian is truly too outstanding. Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes flashed with joy. This foster brother of hers might even surpass her father in the future. How good would it be if he was her biological younger brother? If that was the case, her father wouldn't need to worry about who would inherit his legacy. The eyes of Lu Bingyu and Ji Feishue also flickered with astonishment. The disciples of the battle sword sect all exclaimed in shock. However, this was only the beginning. The second diagram was the same as the first diagram. It was so similar that it almost made people think that it was the same painting. But ultimately, Qin Wentian used 12 hours to comprehend it. The energy contained within this sword strike was the power of space. Although the process was similar, at the instant of destruction, the might it unleashed was far more powerful. Next, for the 17th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 8 hours. For the 18th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 6 hours. For the 19th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 4 hours. For the 20th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 2 hours. For the 21st sword strike, Qin Wentian used an hour. After 2 days, he comprehended another 7 sword strikes, from the 15th to the 21st. The people on the ancient mountain peak were all dumbstruck. They stared blankly at Qin Wentian advancing towards the direction of the grass hut. He had already completed the 22nd sword strike. This was already a goal that the vast majority of the members of the battle sword sect had no way of accomplishing. For those below the celestial phenomenon realm, Qin Wentian had already arrived at this place. How difficult was the 22nd sword strike? Could the person who broke the record of the grass hut still be able to continue forward? Nobody knew the answer, but the gazes of the entire battle sword sect were all focused on the grass hut. Chapter 612. The 22nd Sword Strike. Qin Wentian stood in front of the mountain rampart. This time around, other than the terrifying gigantic demonic beasts, there was also a vast starry sky. It was as though this was a constellation. Constellation, these demonic beasts are all under the constellation. Qin Wentian stared at the demonic beasts that were wreaking havoc in the air, yet they were all enveloped by a constellation. There was no need to doubt that only Heavenly Dipper sovereigns could summon such a constellation. A constellation was the sign of someone stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm. Those gigantic demonic beasts howled in frenzy. At this moment, within the constellation, numerous sharp swords arced through the air, raining down from the heavens. This was a constellation formed from the foundation of swords. These sharp swords arced through the air, resembling streams of light as a destructive energy ravaged the entire space. The gigantic demonic beasts that were enveloped by the constellation all screamed in agony as fresh blood flowed from their wounds. All of them were annihilated by this terrifying constellation. This constellation is so powerful. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He had heard that there were great disparities in the strength of constellations, but he had no idea what grade the constellation in front of him was at. This destructive energy seems to be the energy of lightning. However, there's no obvious hint of it, only the radiance of light that exudes a destructive energy. Qin Wentian mused. He had heard that the structure of a constellation could be divided into many different types. A constellation formed from a single true intent infused into a martial soul was the simplest type of constellation. The constellation in front of him right now was formed from swords. This indicated that the martial soul should be a sword. However, there were some extremely powerful constellations that were formed from the fusion of 2 or even 3 different types of true intents. Such constellations would be extremely powerful, especially for those with supreme comprehension abilities. They would be able to comprehend a mutated version of the constellation. For example, even if 2 different people used 2 different types of true intents to comprehend their constellations, the constellations they formed in the end would still be different, resulting in the disparity in power. The constellation in front of him didn't seem to be a constellation formed from a single true intent of lightning. Could there be a true intent of sword hidden within? Qin Wentian thought to himself. After all, sword intent was also proficient in destructive prowess, so it was not surprising that it could create such an effect. But even if Qin Wentian had guessed it, unless he could truly comprehend the formation of this constellation, there was no way for him to comprehend it. Not only that, his cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Although his 2nd level of mandate was already at the perfection boundary when he exited the immortal martial realm, he had yet to comprehend a true intent of his mandate. Wanting to comprehend a fusion of true intents was simply too difficult. The first 7 sword strikes only contained a single martial intent, so it was still possible to comprehend it. However, the difficulty of the 22nd sword had risen to another level. Most likely, it would be extremely difficult to comprehend. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and comprehended quietly. During this period, he reached out to touch the mountain wall several times, but he failed to comprehend the sword each time. Obviously, his perception was wrong. Very quickly, a day passed. Qin Wentian faintly sensed that this sword strike contained a true intent of wind. If the true intents of wind and lightning were to fuse together, he didn't know what effect it would produce. There was a possibility that it would be able to create such a scene of destruction. Maybe, he was right. But even if he was right, without truly comprehending the formation of this constellation, he still wouldn't be able to comprehend this sword strike. I haven't even comprehended a true intent of my mandate yet. I want to comprehend a constellation formed from a fusion of true intents. Seems like I've overestimated myself. Qin Wentian calmly smiled. He wasn't disappointed. Seems like this 20-second sword strike was truly impossible to comprehend before he comprehended a true intent of his mandate. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian smiled and gave up. He turned and descended the steps of the grass hut, causing those on the mountain peak to heave a sigh of relief. The 15th sword strike of the grass hut was already known to only be comprehended by those who were at the celestial phenomenon realm. Qin Wentian had already comprehended the 22nd sword strike. If he continued any further, it would actually be abnormal. Unless, there was a soul of a celestial phenomenon ascendant in Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, arriving at the top of the mountain peak. Lin Shuai smiled at him. Why not continuing? It's just a waste of time. Let's comprehend it next time. Qin Wentian smiled. It's already very impressive that you could comprehend the 7th sword strike that contained a true intent of your mandate. I believe that it won't take too long for you to comprehend a true intent of your mandate. When your cultivation base reaches that level, you would be able to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian. Although you can use some treasures to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm, you mustn't depend on external sources. It's best to rely on your own comprehension. Also, try your best to condense a better constellation. Don't be greedy, you have to focus on perfection. Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He knew that when condensing a constellation, some powerful cultivators might condense a few different types of constellations. But normally speaking, they would only use the most powerful constellation for combat. Lin Shuai was worried that Qin Wentian would go astray and hoped that Qin Wentian would focus on condensing more powerful constellations instead of relying on quantity. When are you preparing to move out? Lin Shuai asked again, naturally referring to the sacred battle platform. Let's move out now, there's not much time left. Let's head to the sacred royal city first, I'm also very interested in that place. Qin Wentian spoke. The sacred battle platform was located in the sacred royal city. No matter what, Qin Wentian had to make a trip there. The vast and powerful sacred royal city was considered a sacred ground in the entire royal sacred region. He headed there a few days earlier because he had some things he needed to do. Okay, I will inform my master and get him to send some people over. Lin Shuai spoke. No need, I'm proficient in disguise techniques. Qin Wentian transmitted his voice to Lin Shuai. Lin Shuai started before nodding his head, replying to Qin Wentian, okay, I will get the elders of the battle sword sect and the royal sacred sect to wait for you at the sacred battle platform. I will return to inform them first. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded. After which, he left the mountain peak and gathered Ouyang Fanla and the others, telling them that he planned to head to the sacred royal city alone. Right, I'm preparing to return to Grand Xia first. Ouyang Guangxing spoke. He planned to look for Jiang Ting. I wish to roam around the southern region of the royal sacred region. After that, I will meet up with you guys in Grand Xia. Fan Lu smiled. I'm returning to Grand Xia, Yunmengyi replied in a low voice. Right, seems like we have to temporarily part ways. After returning to Grand Xia, remember to return to the unmatched realm. We will meet up there. Qin Jing smiled. Other than Mu Feng, these people were all disciples of the unmatched realm. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. Now that he had made enemies in the royal sacred region, he naturally couldn't act as brazenly as before. Also, they all had their own matters to attend to, it was inevitable that they would part ways. Right, Grand Xia, let's meet again. Qin Wentian and his companions hugged each other. When Yunmengyi returned, he noticed her beautiful eyes staring at him. He smiled and walked up, giving her a hug as well, causing Yunmengyi's eyes to flicker. Little rascal, let's go. Qin Wentian called out. Instantly, a white silhouette dashed over. A man and a demonic beast walked out of the battle sword sect. The sacred royal city, the sacred city of the royal sacred region. This ancient city had an ancient history, exuding an aura of majesty. It was unknown how many people would enter and exit this ancient city every day. The atmosphere here was extremely strong, even a stone thrown on the streets could hit a celestial phenomenon ascendant. Hence, it was best not to antagonize the young masters and young mistresses here, or you wouldn't be able to do so. The sacred royal city contained the absolute hegemon of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect. It also had the most famous battle arena, the sacred battle platform, as well as the largest trading market. The 9 great sects of the royal sacred region, the 7 great clans, the 2 empires, as well as the many ancient empires, all had residences in the sacred royal city. They would send their juniors here to broaden their horizons, enroll in the famous academies in the sacred royal city, or send them to the royal sacred sect. At this moment, Qin Wentian stepped into this ancient city that was home to many of the most ancient cities in the royal sacred region. He was casually clad in a simple white robe. The contours of his face were clear, and one could faintly see traces of handsomeness. He appeared to be around 30 years of age, and evidently, this was his appearance after changing his appearance. I'm so tired. A slightly immature voice drifted out from beneath Qin Wentian. The one who spoke was a demonic beast. This demonic beast was exceptionally adorable, it was a little white tiger. The runes on its body didn't exude the aura of a king, and the way it shook its head made it seem like it was drunk. This demonic beast was naturally none other than Little Rascal. Qin Wentian wasn't the only one on Little Rascal's back. There was also a maiden with a peerless figure, dressed in green with a veil and a conical bamboo hat. Although one couldn't see her countenance clearly, just from her demeanor and figure, it was enough to cause one's imagination to run wild. Maybe, this was a peak-level beauty. When Qin Wentian left the battle sword sect, Qin was actually willing to follow him. Although Qin Wentian was somewhat taken aback, he was naturally more than happy to do so. You good for nothing, we are so light yet you still say you're tired. We raised you for nothing. Qin Wentian rapped Little Rascal on its head. You two, villains colluding together to bully me. Little Rascal whimpered, his words causing many in the surroundings to turn their gazes over in bewilderment. Little Rascal is so amusing. A maiden laughed. What are you looking at? I've never seen such an adorable demonic beast before. Little Rascal spoke in a babyish voice, causing Qin Wentian's face to be filled with black lines. He discovered that Little Rascal learning how to speak wasn't a joyous matter at all. Indeed, I've never seen him before. Little Rascal, what are you doing here in the sacred royal city? That maiden laughed. I'm here to suppress the geniuses and shake the world with my name. Little Rascal tyrannically spoke, causing the people in the surroundings to snicker. Everywhere he passed by, he would definitely become the target of attention. Qin Wentian's face turned black as he stared at Little Rascal's bragging. He already regretted bringing him along. Initially, he wanted to keep a low profile, but who would have thought that he would be tricked by Little Rascal? Can you stop? Qin Wentian gave Little Rascal a ruthless slap on the face as he walked on the streets. Sir, if you don't like it, just give it to me. At this moment, a voice drifted over. After which, Qin Wentian saw a gigantic Yuan meteor stone appearing in front of him. This Yuan meteor stone was filled with an incomparably dense astral energy. Not only that, it wasn't polished to a standard size, it was completely natural. Qin Wentian turned his head, only to see a young man pointing to the Yuan meteor stone. "Leave that demonic beast to me, this Yuan meteor stone is yours." Chapter 613. Qin Wentian glanced at the young man and instantly knew his cultivation base. He was at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper, and there was a hint of arrogance in the center of his brows. Behind him, there was a maiden clad in a purplish-red dress that accentuated her figure to perfection. Her long hair was tied up in a bun, and the excess strands of her hair cascaded downwards, revealing her fair neck. Her skin was as smooth as water, and she exuded a sense of nobility and elegance. The eyes of this maiden gleamed with a bright light as she stared at little rascal who was in the form of a white tiger. Everyone understood that this young man wanted this demonic beast because he wanted to gain the favor of this maiden. "Sorry, I don't wish to trade yet." Qin Wentian waved his hands as the Yuan meteor stone flew back to the young man. The young man frowned as an expression of unhappiness appeared on his face. However, it only lasted for an instant before he relaxed and turned to Qin Wentian. "I'm Rong Yan from the Divine Weapon Academy, and this is my junior apprentice sister, Shen Jing. She likes this demonic beast a lot, and since you don't like it, why don't you give it to me? If you don't want enough Yuan meteor stones, feel free to ask." So it's someone from the Divine Weapon Academy. They are all rich and overbearing fellows. The people in the surroundings mused in their hearts. The Divine Weapon Academy mainly nurtured Grandmaster weaponsmiths. After graduating from the academy, many of them would become 5th-ranked weaponsmiths, and these people were all extremely wealthy. For those who were proficient in weaponsmithing, there was no one who wasn't wealthy. Divine Weapon Academy. A bright light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. This time around, he came to the sacred royal city with the intention of finding a weaponsmithing place. What he needed now was a huge sum of wealth, and weaponsmithing was undoubtedly the fastest method. Upon seeing the bright light in Qin Wentian's eyes, a hint of disdain flickered in Rong Yan's eyes. Indeed, even in the sacred royal city, the Divine Weapon Academy was extremely famous. Many people would do all they could to befriend these future Grandmaster weaponsmiths. Seems like this young man was no exception. The look in his eyes changed after hearing his identity. "My name is Tianwen, a nameless character. I heard that there would be a grand battle between geniuses on the sacred battle platform in the royal sacred region, hence I traveled a great distance just to spectate." Qin Wentian laughed. Little rascal who was beside him rolled its eyes, silently cursing at how shameless this fellow was. He actually claimed to be a supreme genius. Too shameless. The arranged battle between Qin Wentian and Di Shi has indeed caused quite a commotion. Right now, there are already many people rushing over. I'm sure the battle will be extremely fascinating. Rong Yan nodded, yet his gaze was still fixed on little rascal. Qin Wentian glanced at the little fellow beside him, and a sinister smile flashed across his eyes. The little fellow shuddered at the sight of it. What was this guy thinking? My little demon is disobedient. If Miss Shen likes it, I can let it play with Miss Shen. When Miss Shen is tired of it, you can return it to me. Qin Wentian stared at the two of them as though he was looking at a treasure. Qin Wentian was naturally happy that they were here to deliver a treasure to him. Shen Jing's brows twitched, she could feel that Qin Wentian was scheming something. The look in his eyes made her feel extremely uncomfortable. But at this moment, the body of the little white tiger actually shrunk as it transformed into a beam of light and rushed into her bosom. Shen Jing was startled. Staring at the pure and adorable eyes of the little white tiger, a faint feeling of love blossomed in her heart. Beautiful sister, you are so beautiful. Little rascal spoke in a baby-like voice, causing Shen Jing to smile. Beautiful sister, your smile is so beautiful. Little rascal crawled into Shen Jing's bosom, its little paws scratching everywhere. When Qin Wentian saw this scene, his heart was filled with endless sympathy for Shen Jing. He couldn't help but think of the scene where Qing Er carried little rascal with one hand. It seemed like Qing Er knew this bastard very well. Shen Jing had never seen such an adorable little white tiger before. How could she think of anything else? Although there was a strange feeling in front of her chest, looking at the pair of innocent and adorable eyes, she didn't think too much about it. She rubbed little rascal's head and said, "How could there be such a cute little demon? He actually dared to lay his hands on it. Yes, he is so bad. He has no ability, his cultivation is weak, and he even made me starve." Little rascal blinked his eyes, as though he was about to cry. Although his tone was still immature, his words were getting clearer and clearer. Shen Jing glanced at Qin Wentian coldly, but coincidentally saw Qin Wentian looking at her. There seemed to be a strange light in his eyes, causing Shen Jing to feel even more unhappy. Was he coveting her again? "Miss Shen, I wish to learn weaponsmithing, I wonder if you can introduce me to you." Qin Wentian spoke, causing Shen Jing's impression of Qin Wentian to worsen. Rong Yan, who was beside her, arrogantly glanced at Qin Wentian. So it turned out that Qin Wentian had such a motive. He then coldly stated, "I can introduce you to me, but it isn't so simple to become a student of the Divine Weapon Academy. Maybe you can start as an apprentice, I can arrange it for you." The people in the surroundings all had expressions of interest on their faces. Although the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were of high status, the apprentices were merely people who ran errands. Once the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were unhappy, they would be beaten and scolded. This Rong Yan was intentionally suppressing this apprentice. Shen Jing had a satisfied expression on her face when she heard Rong Yan's words, as she calmly stared at Qin Wentian. "Sure, if that's the case, I'll have to thank you." Qin Wentian acted as though he didn't know what the other party was thinking. A smile appeared on his face, yet he was coldly laughing in his heart. Did they really want him to become an apprentice in the Divine Weapon Academy? If he really wanted to forge weapons, these two people in front of him would have to step aside. No worries. At this moment, the disdain in Rong Yan's eyes was unmasked. Someone who was willing to become an apprentice, what capabilities could he have? As for that little demon, as long as his junior apprentice sister Shen Jing liked him, why would he still need to return him? However, Rong Yan still had a trace of suspicion towards Qing, who was standing behind Qin Wentian. He then asked, "Who is she? Why doesn't she want to show her face to others?" "My younger sister, her body is weak, she wouldn't be able to withstand the cold," Qin Wentian casually replied. Although Rong Yan wouldn't believe him, he couldn't be bothered to question further. "Let's go." Shen Jing walked over, she didn't even glance at Qin Wentian, directly walking past Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian and Qin Er followed behind. As for little rascal, it was currently lying in Shen Jing's embrace, enjoying himself. Qin Wentian felt a sense of guilt. The Divine Weapon Academy exuded a simple and unadorned aura. From the moment they entered, Qin Wentian could already sense the fluctuations of divine inscriptions everywhere. Each and every one of the silvery white pillars exuded a mystical aura, as though they were divine weapons forged from divine inscriptions. "Follow me closely." Rong Yan walked in front, instructing Qin Wentian. After informing the guards, he could only bring Qin Wentian into the academy. Academies were different from sections. Sects were stricter, while academies were more relaxed. Hence, Rong Yan could easily bring Qin Wentian into the academy. "Let's go to the weaponsmithing pagoda to take a look. The year-end weaponsmithing examination is coming soon, everyone should be there, right?" Shen Jing spoke in a low voice. Rong Yan nodded his head and smiled, "Given junior sister's talent in weaponsmithing, you should be able to forge a top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapon. You definitely won't disappoint, teacher." Shen Jing declined to comment. The group of them arrived at the public square. In the center of the public square, there was a weaponsmithing pagoda. The pagoda was separated into tens of levels, and each level had several slots for weaponsmithing. This pagoda was like a divine weapon, exuding a terrifying heat. The entire pagoda is filled with terrifyingly high-temperature flames. There's basically no need to worry about the problem of flames when forging weapons here. As long as one is a weaponsmith, they would be able to directly start the forging process. How unique! Qin Wentian stared at the pagoda. The higher they went, the fewer slots there were. However, the weaponsmiths seemed to be more and more powerful, and many people were looking up to them. Senior brother Wang Yunfei is still as amazing as ever. He can already forge top-grade 4th-rank divine weapons. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation base is restricted, he might even have a chance to forge 5th-rank divine weapons. In the future, he would definitely become a 5th-ranked weaponsmith grandmaster. Shen Jing's gaze landed on the silhouette of a young man at the top of the pagoda, as a hint of admiration flashed in her eyes. In the Heavenly Dipper realm, the person she admired the most in the Divine Weapon Academy was none other than senior brother Wang Yunfei. Not only was his weaponsmithing abilities outstanding, his combat prowess was extremely high as well. He was simply a perfect heaven's chosen. Indeed. Rong Yen nodded his head, a trace of jealousy flashed in his heart. However, he couldn't deny how outstanding Qin Wentian was. Junior sister Moon, you are here as well. At this moment, Rong Yen noticed a young girl standing beside him, as a radiant smile appeared on his face. This girl had a lackluster countenance, and was clad in simple robes. Although her features were delicate and pretty, when she stood beside Shen Jing, she appeared somewhat dim. Shen Jing was clad in a purplish-red dress, and the magnificence she exuded caused her to lower her head slightly. Senior brother Rong Yen, Moon replied in a low voice. Junior sister, I heard that you don't have an apprentice for weaponsmithing. This is extremely inconvenient. Today, I found one for you from outside, I will hand him over to you. Rong Yen spoke to Moon as he pointed to Qin Wentian. Moon glanced at Qin Wentian as a gentle smile appeared on her face. She nodded her head, okay, thank you senior brother Rong Yen. No worries, you can bring him to your weaponsmithing pavilion. Rong Yen smiled. Moon didn't say anything. She turned to Qin Wentian and smiled, my name is Moon. Tianwen. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Tianwen, come with me. Moon brought Qin Wentian away. Qin Wentian saw that Rong Yen and Shen Jing didn't even glance at him, let alone returning little rascal to him. Tianwen, why did you come here to be an apprentice? It's basically impossible to learn anything from a weaponsmith. It's impossible to hope that a weaponsmith would teach you divine inscriptions. After walking for some distance, Moon stared at Qin Wentian with some worry in her eyes. Also, at your age, if you are just starting out, it's best if you don't learn divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian stared at Moon's eyes. Although Moon wasn't as breathtaking as Shen Jing, she was still very delicate and pretty. That pair of spirited eyes exuded a pure sense of beauty. If she changed her clothes and dressed up seriously, she wouldn't lose out to Shen Jing by much. Is it very difficult to obtain divine inscriptions here? Qin Wentian asked. He naturally understood the importance of divine inscriptions. Normally speaking, who would teach you the divine inscriptions they were proficient in? The Divine Weapon Academy is only an academy, not your home. Let alone a weaponsmith apprentice, even if you are a student, they wouldn't give you access to all divine inscriptions. Only after you have achieved a certain level of results would they choose to give you access to divine inscriptions. I've been here for almost a year and I still haven't obtained any divine inscriptions that surpassed my own standards. However, if I perform well in the examination this time around, I might have a chance. Moon's eyes gleamed with a bright light. Evidently, she had been waiting for this day for a very long time. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.